Good morning, everybody, and welcome to OJ show where you come to learn. We won't kill you. It's not that kind of OJ show, but you're going to come to learn. It's going to be me and Owen discussing life and inviting you to come up and chat with us at some point. Owen's coming to you guys live from the UK. I'm coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. And we're both here together to talk about the mysteries of the world and stuff like that. What's up, Owen?
Good afternoon, Joe. How you doing, mate? I've had a beautiful day.
I'm
This is
doing
now
better than you.
4:30.
You had to go work out.
Well, you
Yeah.
say I
It's a
had
bad
to. I
thing?
mean, it was very much a choice. It
Yeah.
was a beautiful thing. I have walked for over 3 hours. I did near enough 11 kilometers, which I know that doesn't mean anything. Let's see, 11
I have no clue what
kilometers
that means.
in
Zero clue
miles.
what that means.
Okay, so it's like 7 miles.
Got it.
Um,
Okay.
uh, and it was lush,
And
which for me is a
what,
lot.
five kilometers and like 3 miles is about the roughly about the same.
Yeah, something like that. So let me see what my step counter is. Pretty crazy. Let's see what we're up to today.
That that must
So
be about
18.
10,000 steps.
Actually, just under 18,000 I've done today.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I
See what
you
happens there.
know I had a back when I was still a contractor. I had a job site in area. It's like old school Hollywood. It's an area called Hancock Park. Beautiful, beautiful old houses from like the 20s and 30s. And the house I was working on, it had belonged to Antonio Banderas and Melanie Griffin. And
Wow.
yeah, and
Casually.
yeah, and then it was sold to like a Netflix executive. Him and his wife were really active politically and stuff. So um, anyway, I just remember when I would work on that place, it was so big. It was like a 20,000, 25,000 square foot house. By the end of the day, I would look at my iPhone and look at the step counter just from walking around, checking on workers and stuff, just kind of inspecting work and just making my rounds. I would inevitably have like 12,000, 13,000 steps just from
Wow.
doing the rounds, that 7, 8 hours that I was there. And I was like, God, I wouldn't want to live in a house like this. Jeez. It's like a work, it's like a workout just to go to the kitchen. Yeah, but it was beautiful though. Really gorgeous house. The original builder was I think it was the architect of the Hoover Dam. The
Oh my
architect or the
God.
engineer. Yeah, yeah, he was the guy who originally built it. And so it was a gorgeous house. I think he had built it for like his mistress or something. That was kind of the
Oh my
lore
God.
on the yeah, that was kind of the lore on the house. And there was like a chapel in one of the rooms. Another one
Oh
of
my
the
God.
rooms, like the ceiling in there was like imported from Italy. It's like a coffered ceiling that they brought. Because this is like right after World War I. A lot of families started to like literally import home. Well, even from your country, import homes from England and Italy, and literally just ship
Yeah.
them over to the
That was big
states
in LA,
and
right, Joe? Really
reassemble
big in
them.
LA. That was really big
It's
in
really
LA
big in LA.
moving.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. There's even
Well,
one house I did where in the so these houses I would do, they would always have like a in the master in the master suite, because it's not a master room. um they would always have like a his and a her bathroom and closet. And in one of the closets
cool.
that I did, it was a floor that was reclaimed from a like a 15th or 14th century cathedral. And it was
Oh
this
my God.
old dude. You're just like touching and this priceless antique, and
God.
that
Wow.
was the floor in her walk-in closet. It was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah, and it was wood too. So it was really old wood, hundreds of years old, and gorgeous. By the way, just absolutely gorgeous. So I, one of the things, man, I just loved. Just having the privilege to work on that stuff was awesome. You know, really,
Yeah, no doubt.
especially for a history guy like me. So, I loved that shit. It was awesome, awesome,
Dude,
and
did you see the other
priceless.
day? Well, yeah, no, yeah, priceless is right. I mean, you can't. That's ancient history that only exists at one time. I mean, you can't just nobody can buy that. If
Right?
you have it, that's it, right? That's insane. Do you remember the other day I sent you some photos when I was walking
Yeah.
around?
Oh, yeah. I look.
Right,
That's
that
what I was saying, man. I
church,
loved it. Yeah.
yeah, that church goes back to the 11th century,
Oh,
1086 or
jeez.
something like that. Yeah,
So we're
that
talking
is,
1086. So we're talking Edward. Oh my God, William the Conqueror, right after
yeah,
Hastings.
yeah, it's like 950 years old, bro.
Oh my Lord. Okay. So I mean, that's right after 1066. I mean, that's like right when England is becoming England.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. See,
indeed.
I will go over there at some point. I'll like
Mhm.
break down into tears. It'll be the one time you'll see me cry in my life.
Dude,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
truly beautiful. It is a beautiful place to go.
Oh,
It
jeez.
gives you, people say, "Oh, that's awesome," but this truly does
Mhm.
inspire awe. You go in. I like to walk through just to feel that. It's incredible. But the history and the thing about it is the timelessness. The fact that it has been there through generation after generation after generation. Your little life is nothing, and nothing
Yeah.
changes about it. I was
Yeah.
confirmed there as a child
Oh,
over
wow.
30 years ago, 35 years ago. I went to
Oh,
Sunday
wow.
school right there, and every single thing about it is exactly the same.
So
You know,
that's still an active church?
yes, it is. Yes, it is. It
Oh my
absolutely is.
God.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking about some of the people who must have gone through there. Wow. Oh my God. So do you know when it like was it active from 10 you said 1085 until now, like constantly?
Yep, it is indeed.
Amazing.
It survives. It survived. It's the one of the few monastery churches that remained standing after the dissolution of the monasteries by Henry VIII,
Yep. Yep.
because most of them are
Right.
gone, and
Right.
it still stands. But the priory's history apparently stretches back to more like the 7th century, because there was a Saxon priory on the site, and the current building dates back to the 11th century. So the site itself goes back to the 7th fucking century, mate. But the building has been there since the 11th, so it has been a place of worship since the 7th century.
So 600s, man. So I mean, we're talking
Almost
at
one and a half
least
thousand years of consistent
well,
worship.
I mean, the Vikings, that's over 100 years. Vikings aren't even coming in to start raiding England till 793. That's, the raid on Lindisfarne is 793. So I mean, god dang,
Yeah.
man, that is just so old. Wow.
Yeah. It's one of the
Wow.
longest parish churches in England. It boasts a nave of over 300 feet. So, and it has been, yeah, it's one of the only churches to have survived Henry VIII's rule, having been a place of worship for over 1,300 years.
God. I mean, Henry VIII is one of those fascinating figures, how a guy who just needed to get a divorce really
Oh,
changed
dude.
history. Really, really, guy just needed to get
Yeah.
he just needed to get a divorce, and
Hmm.
you know Julia
It's
who was
fascinating.
Julius wouldn't allow it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
Well,
well, and there's some.
he didn't want anybody to be worshipping anything other than him, you see, which is why he smashed all these churches down. But this
Oh
one
man,
somehow managed to stay. It's, yeah, and you can go up
it's
into
crazy, man.
the yeah, and it's all fully accessible. It's all open to the public and so on. And you can go up into into these old towers and so on, and you can go and see the bells as well. I think actually I took a video. I missed the first chime, but every half an hour, it chimes, and every hour you get the thing, and you can hear it all throughout the town.
Well, and I mean, look, this is what makes so in America, we just don't. We're just such a young. People don't realize this. We're actually the oldest government on the planet right now, believe it or not. Um, but we're
Mm.
a very young country, right? Our constitution is the oldest constitution in existence at the moment. France has had something like, I think, 15 different governments since their revolution. They have
Mm.
like a average of a new government every 12 years, something like that. Um, so we're an old constitution currently, but we're a very young nation. We don't have anything like that. We just, even George Washington, like some of our founding fathers, that's 10 generations ago. It's
Yeah.
really not that long. And
Mhm.
when I go to Europe and just, just go see these buildings that are 1,000 years old. When I was in Milan,
Mm.
just look at this, the Duomo there, and that cathedral took 600 years to build.
Wow. Wow.
600 years. And it's like I just think about like the original stonemason. You know what I'm like this guy who just there's not a chance he's gonna sit in the pews there. He knows it. His kids, his
That
grandkids.
church is breathtaking.
It
Like if anybody
really
hasn't been to
is.
Milan, it's like wow, like
Yeah.
insane.
Well, and then just, beyond even that, just all the other little things around, you go in this little galleria and there's, they have there's a picture of a bull in there, and it's real. There's like a big depression in there because people, they would stand on the bull, well, where the testicles are on the bull, and they spin around three times. And because the bull was like the symbol of the House of Savoy. And so, when Savoy, there was a lot for a long time. Italy was the battlefield of Europe. So there's like a
Mm.
70-year period where there was probably about 14 wars from about like 1498, 97 to about the 1570s, where there's just a constant battlefield. And when Savoy took over, the people there didn't like it, so it turned into this thing where they go stand on it and spin around, and it's still there to this day. And you see it, and it's just like, here's this thing that's over 500 years old, and you just see the depression in it. You can just see all that history just from 25 generations ago, when people are like, oh, screw these people. It's amazing. You're seeing that stuff, and it's just everywhere. It's everywhere. Um, I love it. It's why I love going out there, because you just don't get to see anything like that over here. We just don't have it. I mean, there's
Joe,
some.
Italy in particular feels like it's a country that just has multiple countries all in one country. It just
Well, it
feels like a
was.
bunch of different cultures and
It was.
in
Yeah.
city states.
So Italy, is a relatively young country. The idea of a unified Italy, that's really not until the 1848. So Italy was, you had the
Mhm.
Kingdom of Naples, then that became a kingdom called the Two Sicilies, the Papal States, and then of course, you had like Florence and Venice and Genoa and Milan, this is like kind of their city states. And so it was always really um, divided. It was divided, and because of that, the French would come in and try to take over a piece. The Spanish would come in and try to take over a piece. And what would happen is, once like one power started to get a little too strong, everyone else would unite against that power. So no one was ever able to really unify the land, and it stayed that way for a long time. So it. I mean, again, it's like, uh, people don't realize that, but a lot of, like Germany too. Germany's only been a unified country since the 1870s. It's a young country.
Mm.
There's there's a history there that goes back millennia, but the idea of a unified Germany, well, even in our lifetime, right? You had East and West Germany, but
You're right.
but before that, the idea of like a federal Germany um, is pretty recent. It was not. You had the Holy Roman Empire until Napoleon, and then after that, after Napoleon, loses, it's just a bunch of little, again, little city states, little principalities, and even
Do
during the empire, it was all, it was all broken up. So you'd have these cities that are, they're countries, they're their own nations, and they're the size of like, the city I live in, like a Laverne, where they've got their own prince, and then the bigger principalities they'd have what were called electors. And so there were like seven electors, and they would get together whenever the emperor would die, and they would elect a new emperor. And so after Charlemagne, and this happened in the year 800. He was crowned the Holy Roman Emperor, and that's like what started that. And again, until Napoleon, so it was a thousand year country or kingdom or empire, and they had their own kind of form of electing a leader, and that it lasted for a very very long time. Um, there was really no idea of, hey, I'm a like, hey, we're Germany.
Mm.
That is
You really are a history
pretty
buff, aren't you? But that's actually you
pretty
reminded me of how
recent.
you reminded me of how weirdly the UK is actually comprised.
Very
Because you think,
same.
yeah, because we are four, we're kind of four countries.
Very much. Well, it's why your crest is cut in fourths. that's why.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
we have. So the full name is of what you say the British is actually the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland,
that's right. Yeah,
and that covers so Great Britain covers England, Scotland, and
and
Wales, and then
Wales. Yeah,
Northern Ireland sits over on the neighbouring island, right? But together we have this sovereign state, the UK. But each of
right.
these countries, we've definitely got our own culture and legal system, education as well. It's not unified. Sports teams and a good bit of political independence. Scotland even has its own parliament.
Well, I was going to say
Um,
Scotland, and plus every 20 years, Scotland discusses, hey,
oh,
should we,
leaving.
should we leave? Yeah, should we leave? And
Oh,
then,
God, yeah.
that's like a standard thing that
Mm,
happens every few years. Never
indeed.
happens, but it's discussed.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It really is interesting too. Like some of the older kingdoms, like like in England or in France, just the way, I won't bore you guys with all this stuff, but the way, just the
Tune
way
into
the
the
like,
History Channel.
yeah, yeah. I know. I don't want to do that to everybody. Put everyone to sleep. But like the way they would have to make deals with the king, the kings were not as powerful as people think they are. Especially,
Mm,
especially the English kings. Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Barack Obama have way more power than any English king ever had.
yep.
Um, there were a couple, and there were periods of time where political thought moved in a direction where, they thought, oh, okay, the sovereign should have more power. So you have these kings throughout history where, like the Louis the XIV or Henry VIII, where like the prevailing political thought of the day was, well, the sovereign should really be invested with all the power. But those were really short lived, and there was always a lot of pushback. They really were not as powerful as people think, tend to look back and think they were. And especially in places like I say, like France and stuff, where they had to make really strange concessions in order to, a lot of times, more often than not, it was like the king was powerful in the capital, and then
Mm,
once you leave the capital and start getting out into the more like suburbs or distant territories, royal authority is pretty limited, and people didn't really listen.
mm,
So it would create really strange systems. Like France had a really interesting one where you'd have like, again, it's like really not even until Napoleon where like all of France is even speaking French, because there were just so many different local dialects. A lot of
oh,
people
yeah.
speaking Flemish, a lot of people speaking
Mm,
Italian. speaking Basque, speaking Spanish. There's still even like there's still these little areas where there are these kind of hangovers from just like the Middle Ages, or one hangover from the War of Spanish Succession. There's a little area inside of France, maybe 8 miles across the border from Spain, where there's a little piece of Spain that's completely surrounded by France, but it's Spanish territory. And
No way.
yeah, it's like just a couple little cities right there, and it's belongs to Spain, but it's like inside of France. So, and it's just never got worked out. Kind of like Gibraltar inside of Spain. It's still ruled by the
Mm.
UK.
Yeah.
So you have those weird situations like that. Um, anyway, this is little
Crazy.
hangovers from thousands of years of uh,
Well,
monarchs and
world's a
royal
messy place.
families.
The world was
Very
way
messy.
messier,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's never really stopped being messy. But and what we think of now as stability really isn't at all stable. But things definitely were messier. Yeah, I mean, it's called the United Kingdom because there were many kingdoms here, right?
yeah.
You had this kind
Right.
of patchwork of kingdoms, lots of them. You had, it's only as you were saying, yeah, and it's only by about what 1700 and something that you actually had
Uh,
the Great
United Kingdom,
Britain, even the
yes.
rise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
1704. Yeah, yeah. The act of union,
that's
right?
crazy.
1704, maybe 1707. Yeah, it's Queen Anne, right? Queen Anne, 1704, I think.
I don't
Um,
honestly
I
know.
I, I
My
could be
mum knows
wrong.
all this stuff. My dad's a history buff. He'd know all this stuff. He's the true historian. Mum would know
Well,
because her intellect is just ridiculous, but I don't. I used to not pay any attention to this stuff. I used to not care as a kid because I was a technophile. I wanted everything modern. I
right,
liked Star Trek, and I was looking to the future. And I used to find all
right.
these old things I got dragged around to be so insufferably boring. And yet now, as an adult, I find them fascinating and really grounding, and it really kind of gives you a sense of timelessness and puts you
Oh, see,
into.
I'm the exact opposite. I always said I was born in the wrong time, which is why I didn't know how to send an email until about a year ago. I
Shut
always
up.
said I was supposed to fight in those Italian wars. I was supposed
Oh,
to
God.
that I wanted to be a field commander, right? And you know some war that no one remembers now. The War of Austrian Succession. You know, and that was what I just felt like that's a time period I could get behind.
Ah,
Um, the thing you said something interesting too, like people look back on those times now and they think like we're different, and we're not. We're still very much the same, and something I'm always kind of harping on, like human nature doesn't really change. We think we're so modern and advanced now, but we're really not. Um, we're still the same people. There's nothing new under the sun. The only thing that's different is we have some better technology now. Um, that's about
mhm,
it. But there's still the same underlying passions. We haven't advanced, and it's this like arrogance of the modern world where we think we have, and we look back on people in different time periods and we judge them through modern eyes, and we say, oh, look at these people, they were all Neanderthals and they were all so stupid. And it's, I think the exact opposite. I look back at your average American citizen 100 years ago, or European citizen 100, 200 years ago, that was living on a farm. This is one thing people don't realize. Isaac Newton was writing his Isaac Newton was writing his book for that farmer to read. So
mm,
your average farmer was going to his local bookstore back then and just doing a little bit of light reading on calculus. That
mm,
is not what the average person is doing today. And not only was he doing some light reading on, John Locke and Newton and John Edwards and Calvin, and getting into these like really weighty, deep, theological discussions, and
and they would discuss them
scientific.
too. And this is the thing,
Right.
they would read this stuff and then
And
all talk
discuss
about it.
them. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was very much a salon culture in Britain and France where people would go discuss these things. And,
Mm,
you know, but not only that, so not only are they like kicking around like weighty theology from John Edwards, people who in America probably don't even know that name, but he's the most accomplished scholar in American history. No clue who it is, by the way.
mm,
And they're very
mm,
much living in his world today, right?
mm.
Even like the atheist who rejects God and says like, oh no no no, they're very much living according to like Christian morals, right? They think people are
Yes.
they think people are all created equal, right? Well, where do you think that idea comes from? And
Oh.
so they think people all have certain rights. Well, where do you think that idea comes from? If you go back to a pre-Christian world or a world before Calvin or Edwards or Luther or Christ himself, well, you have the Roman world, right, where people, well, they believe in power, right? They don't believe people
Oh.
were created equal, right? They believe the people over there were stronger than them, so I'm going to go enslave them. And if I kill them, it's no real big deal.
Oh,
That
now
is not
that's interesting.
an ethic that your average atheist today would be okay with. In fact, they would feel very foreign in that world. So it's like
Interesting.
the fish that swims in water. They don't realize they're swimming in water, but people are very much living in that, you know, uh, reformed world, right? That world of reformed theology, and no clue about it, right? And again, that's where some of this like this arrogance that I'm talking about comes from, where there's no um, grasp on the past, and there's this thought that we're so superior now. We've moved to this next level where we're just much better than everyone else. And again, it's like I look back at that farmer in the 18th century, and I tend to think he's a much more impressive person than myself,
And I bet
right?
he was
Or
happier. I bet he was happier too.
oh, he's probably much happier. Yeah, he
That's
had
the
a,
thing
a
that's fucked up.
yeah, he had a big
Everything's
family. He
yeah,
had a big family. Had a big support system. He knew his neighbors.
yeah.
He probably had a massive participation in his local political system, even if it was a system under royal authority, right? Even if you're living in like the colonies or you're living in Britain or France, you know
Mm,
there's still very much self-government going on there. Again, like self-government didn't just come out of nowhere. There was a king who didn't have a cell phone, right? So if you lived 500 miles away from the capital, the king's not really managing things there. You are.
right.
So like again, it's like these people are reading things that people today would not be able to read. Go by the prince, go by the Mathematica Principia by Isaac Newton, and go read that page turner, right? And see and see how easy people get through that, or anything Ben Franklin wrote, anything. Again, that's what your common guy was reading, and running a farm, and running a like normally like a side business on their farm. They would normally have like a some kind of shop, right? They're making nails, they're making horseshoes, or
Mm.
um, you know, shirts, something else like that. These were very impressive people. And then every summer they would go grab their sword and musket and go on a summer campaign. These are like really, really impressive people.
But it
And
was
we look
hard
back
work
on
too.
them. That was very
It
hard
was.
work.
This is
Yeah.
the thing, we don't we get everything for very little, and
I've
actually
never had
there's
to I've never had to go kill an animal and
no.
like skin it and do again just do the normal things that it took to eat dinner.
Hey, Joe, there are people that still do that though. Like
Sure.
in this country, there's places that they still live life like that.
uh, Absolutely.
But
I
but
Of
but we
course.
live in LA, and we like we think that the world is exactly like the world that we live in right here, right? So small world in our perception.
Indeed. What were you saying there, Owen?
Well, no, it's just there's an interesting. Yeah, it occurs to me. I was watching a bit of Jimmy Carr. I don't know if you know Jimmy Carr.
My
He's
God, that
a
name rings a bell. That name is he like a comedian?
yes, he
Yeah.
certainly
Okay.
is. Yeah, he's a writer. He's a television host. Very dark humor, very dry wit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think I
He's
know who. I think I know who that is. Yeah.
yeah, he's fantastic. And just has this really he has this really interesting quote that I saw literally the other day, 2 days ago, and it really hit me actually, and it was something I wanted to bring up today because I wanted to tell you about it. Because this is the fun thing about our podcast, really, is I will have things and you will have things on your mind, and we get to share them with each other. And where we live so far apart, we probably won't have necessarily heard it, or if we have, it might be due to a similarity or whatever. But anyway, the thing that occurred to me, and this actually is two parts, in fact, because what we've just been talking about is the second part of this quote, the bit that kind of follows on from it. But the bit that really hit me is a very short, very succinct part. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to do it in reverse order. I'm going to come back to the bit that really hit me hard. The second half is this, and he says, I think we suffer in the West a little bit from life dysmorphia. Um, he said, you hear a lot about body dysmorphia or gender dysmorphia. We've got life dysmorphia. A lot of people think their life is terrible because there's this kind of hedonic treadmill. You get used to how great your life is. No
Yeah.
one had a hot shower until 50 years ago. When you stand in a hot shower, take a moment. Well, no one that you admire from 100 years ago had this simple pleasure in life. Literally, that didn't exist.
Yep.
There's been 100 billion people ever. We are in the top percentile in terms of the luck we have had of all people that ever lived, all humans, the entire experience. I mean, this isn't part of his quote, this is for me now, just reflecting. Good God, Anyway, that the lives, the calorific intake that we just take for granted, right?
Yes.
The fact that our children don't die in the first year
Yep.
of modern medicine and our lives and the entertainment that we get. We are living like kings, and yet life has never been objectively better, but subjectively worse.
Yeah. Right.
Interesting. But that was, yeah. But the bit that really, and that just seemed like a really great point he was making, exactly what we're talking about. But the thing,
Well,
this is a little, but go on.
it, it's it's this it's the again, what's the first thing we do with our children once they're born? We give them a name, right?
Hmm.
People didn't name their kids till they were 5 years old.
No
Because it was
way.
just you're gonna, chances are this little gift right here is not gonna make it.
Whoa.
So we don't want to go getting too attached here. And it
Wow.
that was just a reality of life. I think even my great grandma, the reason I'm in America, she came from Portugal and just here, she had tuberculosis. Like that's just not even a,
Whoa.
no one has TB, and that's just not a
Mm.
reality that there's no polio, there's no, we really do live better and more comfortable lives. And it gets to this, there's this old concept in classical antiquity, luxus. It's where we get the word luxury from, and
Okay.
it didn't mean what that means now. Okay, so when Tacitus is writing about luxus, and it's more of like a derogatory term, basically saying like you're decadent and weak and getting away from the virtues that make a, well, and virtue would even be one of those like things they built society on, which is really a Latin word for manliness, is what virtue means. It comes from the Latin word vir, which means man.
Mm.
And it, you're getting away from like the things that make life tough. And a tough life makes a, it builds character, right? It gives you meaning,
Mm.
and it totally, totally fits in with that, um good men produce good times, or tough times produce good
Mm.
men produce good times produce weak men produce bad times, and
Oh
then the
my
cycle
God.
starts over again,
Oh my
and
God.
it's like that is a very prevalent idea in like classical antiquity, where especially like in Roman and Greek culture, where they would see, okay, society's getting too rich. We're getting too rich, and people are living too easy. People, their
Hmm.
life is too easy now, and again, like they dealt with all the same things. I think this is one thing we struggle with, is because when we look back, it's hard to remember that everyone else had just as much of a story as you. Everyone, they perceived time in the same way you perceive time. They had slow days, they had boring days, they had happy moments, they had sad moments. And, life went on for them just in the same way it does for all of us. And it's hard
Mm.
to conceptualize that sometimes. I know even for me it is, right? When I'm looking back on some of these people I admire, and, I'm like, look, a minute for them was the same as a minute for me is, and they
Mm.
perceived it in the same way, and they had hopes and dreams and aspirations and fears and doubts and all the same things that I have. um and I just have air conditioning, and I have water that won't kill me, like, and again, the hot shower, I have a hot shower.
Isn't it
I
crazy
think,
that we can just turn on music as well? We can just decide we
oh
want to listen to music, and any
yeah,
music from all of possible music can just be
yeah,
available.
it's amazing. It is, a like you said, it's a the best time to live,
Mm.
and we're depressed.
Yeah,
It really is fascinating. And
it's
like
too
getting
fair.
getting to what like Dunk was just saying, like in LA, where it's almost an extreme, like the cultural arrogance and stuff is definitely dialed up,
Mm.
in a place like LA more, right? It's going to be much more extreme here. And that isn't to say like there's of course still the spectrum, right? You still have like people who there's like an island off of India, I know, where like no modern man has ever stepped. I forget the name of it, but like anytime someone's tried to make contact, the tribal, like the natives, are killed, like kill whoever comes over, because they just don't want any contact with the outside world.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
um
know.
I forget the name of that island, but or in the Amazon, there's still like people living like they did 10,000 years ago, so it's not to say that that lifestyle doesn't, it does, but it's obviously not, that's not the main lifestyle now, even in the third world, so like even somebody coming up in the third world now is still living with like comforts and luxuries that people 500 years ago could only dream about, like speaking on a phone, that would have sounded like some kind of like black magic, and they would have burnt me at the stake.
Mm.
What are you talking what are you talking about?
Oh,
What
dude.
is that magic, like
You got to think actually
right?
how profound that actually is, though. The fact that you can, the fact that we're doing this is
Yeah,
really, it's
yeah,
crazy.
it's wild.
We're talking to each other from across 8 hours time zone. What's that? 12,500
Miles,
miles.
yeah, yep,
And
yep.
it's instant. There's no delay. There's no issue. We're just doing this, and we can
I'm
have
reacting to
listeners
you
from
in
all
real
around the world.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, uh,
it's wild.
it doesn't make
Joe,
any
it's called
sense.
North Sentinel Island, by the way.
North
That's
Sentinel
North
it.
Island.
Sentinel
That's it.
That's
Island.
it.
Sentinel Island. That's it. Yeah. 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 That's it. Thank you, Jamie. See, Dunks are Jamie.
There he
Dunks.
is.
Thank you, Dunk. Yes. Yeah. North Sentinel Island. That's it.
Bay of
Yeah.
Bengal, right?
Yeah. 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 Anytime someone goes there, they throw a spear at them. It's like that. You ain't coming here. You ain't gonna ruin our society. Um.
That makes so much
It
sense. God.
it of course like kills me with curiosity, It's probably
Oh
how I'm
yeah.
gonna die, because I'm just gonna be like, hey fellas, you mind if I put, oh, 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 oh,
Can you
you
imagine
know?
what they feel like when a helicopter shows up? Because apparently that's a thing. Like helicopters have gone,
Yeah.
and imagine it from their perspective, seeing this weird flying dragon demon thing that makes a howling noise that sounds like thunder. Right?
Well, it's why you have what are called, they call them cargo religions in the in like these little islands in the Pacific from World War II, when we would land, we would land cargo planes, and it's like a word that a lot of these like Polynesian peoples adopted, where like cargo like means, you know like it's like their word for like stuff. And these are people who never saw a plane, and now they're seeing this cargo plane drop off all these things that, plastic. Imagine if you're a native and you see plastic,
Oh,
that's not something natural, and
mhm.
or like rubber,
Wow.
or some kind of polymer, it's like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. Oh, man.
And or even just the clothes, and again, just all these things, and
Alien technology.
it just alien, totally alien. You're seeing this aircraft
Mm,
come and land, people getting off of it, and so there's these small islands where they don't kill you like a North Sentinel Island, but
mhm.
they've like built little, um, these little cargo cults, these little cargo religions. Jamie, Dunk Jamie, you can look that up for you can look that up for a sec. And it's wild, man. Like, and again, it's from like World War II, where they would just see you know these people come with just all this kinds of tech, and they're, wow, what
Mm,
is all this stuff, and again, it'd blow your fucking mind,
mm,
and
mm,
and again, it always fascinates me, we're still, we're the same, we're still the same.
mm,
It's just normal for us, but we would have the
mm,
same, wonder and awe, and I do really think a lot of times, like, what you are getting at is really profound. Look at the rates of mental illness. Look at how just sad people are, and you know, y- I don't think they're struggling with suicide on North Sentinel Island. I
yeah.
doubt that's one of their big problems. I doubt they're dealing with all the mental illnesses that we're dealing with. Now they're dealing with other problems, to be sure, right?
Mm,
Their kids do die. Childbirth is a risky thing. So, again, they don't have the comforts we do,
mm,
but they're probably living a much more fulfilled life, I would imagine. I, I
mm.
would I would venture to make that guess, and I think I'm probably right.
Well, we've got to think as well,
Yeah,
the
they're
ones that
called cargo
survive.
cults, by the way.
Yeah,
Cargo
It's
cargo
cults.
cults.
Malaysia and Papua New Guinea are like the primary
Yeah,
places.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Cargo cults. Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
Thank you again, Jamie
Thanks,
Dunk.
Jamie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you,
cargo cult.
ChatGPT.
Well, indeed. Interesting. Yeah. They're talking about the fact that I'm just thinking about the whole biological human thing. You'd be
Hmm.
basically the same for like a 1 to what, 300,000 years, right?
Well,
So we're the
in
same.
particular, about 70,000 years ago. Like, so, like, because there is like a, from what has been able to be deduced, just from, uh, just like looking at old, finding old, again, very, very, very ancient human remains and stuff, that
Okay.
there's some kind of like brain growth around 70,000 years ago. So,
Okay.
not to say that 200,000 years ago, yeah, you would look, you know identical, right? But there's some kind of like, axial age type breakthrough
Mhm.
around 70,000 years ago.
You go back 10,000 years, right? life looks not just a bit different, but completely different. There's no cities,
Yes.
no
Yes.
cities, no writing,
Right.
no fucking. There's not even farming. There were still
Yep.
hunter gatherers.
Yep.
These small bands, they move with the seasons, survive on the forest plants, hunted meat, and that's 90% of human history right there. Right, living in nature,
Oh
sharing
yeah.
everything.
Yeah. No privacy.
No,
No privacy. No
no rent,
concept
no
of like
ownership of anything. Yeah,
private property. Yeah.
no,
Like
yeah.
no, nothing like that. Nothing
We
like that.
we only started settling down 10,000 years ago with the agricultural revolution, didn't we? As soon as we started planting crops and
Something
building
happened there.
villages, yeah,
Yeah.
which eventually
So,
became kingdoms and then writing systems and then religion and then money and then politics and then, of course, fucking bureaucracy, right?
oh God.
And then just a
Yeah.
couple of hundred years ago, bang, industrial
Karens were
revolution.
born. Yeah.
Right,
Um,
industrial revolution, 200 years ago. Then we started living in cities and using machines. Before the industrial revolution, there were no fucking machines, man. We didn't burn fossil fuels until a couple hundred years ago. And
it's
now we
wild,
have
right?
now we have
Yeah.
memes.
Yeah. And now we have memes, right?
You
And
know,
smartphones
smartphones. Right.
and what you just said, Dunk, Chat GPT,
Oh my
this thing which
God.
promises to, if we thought the industrial revolution changed the world, well, let's wait for the,
Oh
artificial
man, that's gonna
intelligence
change.
revolution. Let's
Dude. Yeah.
if the steam engine changed the world, well, let's see what this little thing does. Um,
Mhm.
I not that I really agree with this guy, um, and but I read him. What's Harari, the Sapiens guy, Sapiens and Homo Deus, and he talks about, look, I don't believe in God yet, but there will be a God in the cloud coming soon, right?
Hmm,
Talking
hmm,
about
hmm, hmm.
like
Oh my
artificial intelligence,
God. Yeah,
and
dude. Oh my God.
and
Yeah, what
like
an interesting point.
yeah, and again,
So
I he is very much typifies this kind of like arrogance that I talk about, that I find so unattractive in the
right,
modern world.
okay.
But
Okay.
and it isn't to he's a smart guy and all that. I'm not trying to
No,
discount
no.
any of that. But there again, there's just that like that arrogance that denies the fact that we're still very much fundamentally the same
Okay.
as what we were 5,000 years ago.
Okay.
We've just had the
But
benefit of
this
us being born on this end of the 5,000 years.
oh yeah.
um, where we do have writing, and we can transmit
But dude.
information to the next generation, and
Oh
and
sure.
build on it and compound on it, and
Mhm.
we just again benefit from that. But right now, there are these technologies that again, that if I know about them, I'm always curious about the stuff that I don't know about, right? because
Okay, sure.
because this is not something I follow, and frankly, I wouldn't even know the right places to look to find this stuff.
Hmm.
But just thinking about the fact that at some point, you know at some point, you're going to be able to spin up a new liver for yourself, a new
Oh
set of
dude, yeah.
kidneys, a new heart, a new whatever tissue you need. You have a blood disease, don't worry. Let's go grab some bone marrow. We'll grow you all new red blood
Mm.
cells, and they'll
It's
be
totally gonna
your
happen.
yeah, and they will be your red blood cells, by the way. With your you
Yeah, man.
know there's no worry about rejection. It's going to have your
Mm.
genetic signature, it'll have your protein markers in it.
Wow.
You're going to be
Yeah.
just fine. That
Wow.
stuff isn't too far off, maybe
No.
even in our lifetime, maybe.
Ooh, that would
Which
be
is,
nice.
well, it's why I'm just going to live as hard as I can. I'm kidding. But
Breaking open
um
another bottle of whiskey.
yeah, as I just take another swish of whiskey here.
Mhm.
No, it's like all these things are, they're at our fingertips right now. And
Yeah.
when you mix it with the kind of like information tech that we have now where where it's nothing for us to shoot a rocket into space.
Hmm.
Really what prohibits that is cost. It's like, well, do we really want to spend that much money? Maybe, maybe
Yeah.
not.
Well, I just want to,
Um,
sorry, I just want to get to the point. I don't know if you're going to circle back to this, but something you said, I was hoping you were. I'm not sure if you're going to. Is
please,
this
please.
idea of a sky daddy, this idea of a god that's going to
Yeah.
come from the
Yeah, yeah,
cloud?
yeah.
Because you've got this idea now, which I'm just thinking about in terms of my daughter, for example. So she was born
Yeah.
into a world where the internet has always existed. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
she just has always known that, you can watch whatever you want whenever you want, and you can look things up whenever you want, but you still have to look things up and then surf through lots of results. Now we
Mm-hmm.
have AI where you can just ask the question. You don't even have to type it now. With voice AI, you can just speak the question. In fact, think about it. I've got, I won't say it out loud, but well, I will just before you wake up and say from Alexa and so on. And
Yeah.
everybody's got these home automations. Next generation of that coming really soon is going to be fully LLM powered. So it's going to be as smart
Yes.
as
Yep.
ChatGPT. So you're going to be able to sit in your home and just have a casual conversation. Now, eventually, then, so now let's say my daughter in 5 or 10 years' time has a child. That child will be brought up into a world where, at all
Correct.
moments, a voice of infinite wisdom
Yep.
and a total ability to answer any question, and quite honestly, at that point, probably be deeply integrated into systems and services. You can
Yes.
just say, "Oh, we need to get some of this," and it will just arrive, right? You just say to your Alexa,
So
"Oh,
so
I need
here's
to
the
have this
thing.
come."
This is what
But
this is exactly where I
but
was
this is the
going with it.
constant devolution,
Yes.
yeah, because the idea of helplessness now is going to continue to the point where we will not be able to do anything or know where anything comes from. We will just say to the voice, the ethereal voice, I need this, and it will just
So,
come.
and we kind of have that. So, here's the thing. So we didn't push hard into this in the West like they have in China, for instance. But the whole thing with 5G, and why there was such a scare around it is when you have 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, you need
Mm.
the network and a device. With 5G, the network like the network is the platform is the device. So at this point we
Ah,
don't actually
clever,
even need this phone. Like, that's why in China,
so clever.
people don't whip out a credit card and pay at the store anymore. They have a 5G network everywhere that's fully integrated into a camera system. So you just go throw your shit in your cart, you look at a little camera, it gets your face and deducts from your bank account. Done. You walk outside and say Uber, and an Uber comes to you, because there's a speaker that can catch that. So, like,
What?
that exists already. And in fact, it's on every telephone pole around your house right now.
Mm.
So that's already here. We we definitely are not comfortable with that as a society yet in the West.
Oh,
Of
yes,
course not. And it's why
absolutely.
it's not being utilized like that, like it is in other places where they're comfortable with a uh, more authoritarian or totalitarian model. But
Mm.
but but make no mistake, we will get comfortable with it.
Of course we will.
Again,
Convenience
if you
will make that happen.
well, I think it's like this. If you talk to somebody from the 20s, they
Mm.
would be highly, highly uncomfortable with the level of
Oh God,
the lack
yeah.
of privacy that we have now. But you talk to
Mm.
somebody now, especially someone who's like born like the same time as my daughter or your daughter,
Mm.
there's no issue at all with the private, like no worries. They're cool with it. They don't care.
Absolutely.
So I think that it'll just progress like that just on its own. But getting back to this idea of like the God concept where I was going with it, where it's like this, man. Like, wait until, because this is going to be the new device, right? The new device, and it won't be with me because I'm not going to be cool with it, and probably not you or Dunk either. But the next generations will be cool with this, where there's
Mhm.
a little implant. Elon Musk's
Oh
already working on a
my
Neuralink,
God. Yeah,
which is going
cool.
to be connected to every AGI and soon ASI, LLM, or whatever the next whatever the next framework
Mm.
of AGI is, which LLMs will get us there. but like we can't even conceive of what the next framework is, right? Because right now we
Mm.
just know LLM, but what what's going to come after that? That's going to be so much better. That's going to be so much, even faster,
Mm.
and makes this tech look like, dial up
Yeah,
AOL internet, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
because that's
Well,
there's an R&D lab right now working on it. We just don't know about it,
well, this is the thing,
so
isn't it? Technology disappears eventually, doesn't it? As it gets more advanced, it just disappears.
yeah,
You think
right.
when we first had home video, we used to have this big old device, this huge VCR thing. We had these whopping great big cassettes. And then we had DVD, which meant that, and it was the next generation. It was higher quality, and yet was easier to get because it was a small little CD, so you could have a lot more content, and it was much more convenient because you could just pop a disc in, no need to rewind. You could skip to any track you want. You could freeze frame, you could do all that amazing. And then eventually, the box just disappeared completely because now it just comes down the wire because now everything's available. You haven't got to get up at all. It's just there. So
Yeah,
of course, but that's all the march of all of our devices. You think your phone used to have a camera, used to have a Walkman, which
yeah,
itself was
right.
an amazing invention not very long ago. You used to have a radio. You used to have, I mean, for goodness sake, you can even do measurements and stuff. So a
Uh,
tape measure,
yep,
50
all these
different things.
things.
A camcorder. You used to have to sling a camcorder over
Yep.
your shoulder, which
Well, you
again
needed a
itself was an
camera and a
incredible.
camcorder, and
Well,
yeah.
all of
Well,
this
I
shit,
was
right? Or a
I
ghetto
was saying
blaster if you
that
wanted to play stuff. But that's all now one device. Get rid of
I
that
was
device is the
saying
next
this
step.
to I was saying this to Dunk, like a couple weeks ago, where I was making the comment where I'm like, hey man, I bet you, and I loved it because then his reaction to it was like, oh no no, it's way more. Where I made the comment, I said, I bet you I have more processing power in my iPhone than the entire Apollo program had.
Oh, good
And
golly, what?
and I loved your reaction, Dunk. You were like, no, there's way more. Like it was just almost like that was like a ridiculous statement. And
Yeah.
it's like, so the
Is
program that
calculators, like simple
right,
calculators, are more
right. Yeah,
powerful
that's what you
than what
said.
took us to
Yeah,
the
Oh,
moon.
God.
It's like
yeah,
those TI
right,
83s
right.
that you'd have. Remember those?
Yes,
Those are way more
that's what you
powerful
were
than the
saying.
computers that took us to the moon. It's kind of
So
crazy.
like think about that progression, dude. Something that like untethered humanity from its home planet. Okay, something that puts us
Mm,
out into the vastness of space. We
mm,
now have way more processing power than that.
mm.
And we just walk around with it in our pocket like it's nothing.
Yeah, man.
Like that's wild, dude. And
Yeah, yeah. We use it for
y-
cat pictures.
yeah, we use it for cat pictures and porn. Like
Yeah, man.
it's amazing. And
Jesus.
like it's a fuck, man. It blows my mind. So
There's that hedonic treadmill again.
yeah, yeah, that hedonic treadmill that I just
But
can't seem to
actually,
get off of.
I tell you what, actually, I would just like to just before I forget it, only because I'm
Yeah, please,
otherwise going to
please,
forget. I think
please.
is to go back to the start because I read the second two thirds, but the bit that really hit me was actually on a much more personal level, a much more individual person's level, and this is a lot more. This is going to be relatable to every single person listening to this right now, and it's important, I think, actually to say this because we're all getting a bit older. I'm sure there are people listening to this that are younger than us, and possibly people that are older than us. Whatever. But we're all starting to get grey hairs. I'm sure a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's simply this. Simply this. It said, if you had a time machine, if you were 30 years in the future, if you could be this healthy and feel this good and be this age, you would give everything materially that you own in 30 years' time to be back here. Just let that
Yep,
sink in for a minute.
yep. That's right.
You give everything to feel this
That is
good
a great
and
point.
to be
Great
this
point.
young.
Not
Right
even
now.
in 30 years. In 10 years, you would give anything to
Yeah.
be back at this very moment. This
Indeed.
is something I I
But you
said
do, yeah,
I
well, you
I,
don't even
s-
have to say. I was thinking you don't even have to be going back to 20 either. That's the thing. I'm 42.
no,
I'll be 43 in a
no.
month. And in 30 or 20 years' time, I will give anything to come back to even this young.
Well, even just you know what? Be my
Even now.
volunteer. Be my volunteer here and play alongside me here.
Mhm.
Okay, Owen?
Yeah.
If I gave you $1 million right now,
Okay. Thank you.
no questions asked. I just said,
Beautiful.
"Hey, Owen, here's $1 million.
That's what I love
Would you
about you,
be
Joe.
would you be
Just
happy?"
generous.
Yeah,
I'd be
you'd be
very
happy,
happy,
right?
pal. I'd be delighted. I'd be very pleased with that.
Probably the kind of happy where no matter what happened later on in the day, you're still just going to be happy. You and
Oh,
Anna
bro.
get in a fight, you're still going to be very happy,
Yeah, man.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to take a
Okay.
lot to fucking bring me down from a million. Yeah.
From that, yeah. Okay. So then how much more happy would you be if I gave you 10 million?
Oh, shit. I
Yeah, now
mean,
we're
okay.
like, holy shit. You're probably happy all
Okay.
month now, right?
Oh,
Now we're
dude,
really
I
talking.
can't even because then it's like then you have oh, dude, then you can have everything you want and still have
Mm-hmm.
millions. You
Mm-hmm.
never need to work again. Your kids never need to work. Life's
You're great.
never going
Yeah.
to go. Inflation can do whatever it needs. You're never
Yep.
having a problem with 10 million. Okay, yeah. Now,
Okay.
shit,
But
dude,
now
I
here's
could fuck. Okay,
here's the catch. Here's the catch though.
okay.
I say, okay, that's it though. So I'm giving you the 10 million and you don't wake up tomorrow.
Oh
Do you take it?
no,
No, of course not.
fuck.
So what you're saying
Oh,
is waking up every day is worth more than $10 million to you. So waking
mm,
up this morning was worth more to you than that $10 million, meaning you should be walking
oh my
around that
god.
happy every day. That should
Fuck.
be your general state.
Shut
And
up, bro.
I love to do that little exercise with people because it is when you put it
Wow.
like that, you realize that this very moment right here, not it's not worth $10 million, but it's priceless because you could really change that
Mm.
to any other number you want, and your answers are going to be the same. Now, sure, maybe if you ask a guy in his 90s that, he'll take the money and give it to his kids. I get it. I'm not looking for
Mm.
the outliers here. You get the point. um
Sure.
it the point there is, we, like, this very moment right here is priceless to all of us, and we wouldn't trade it in for any amount. Just waking up today was millions and millions. Mm, hang on one second.
Mm.
Hey, compa, en el futuro, ven aquí a las 10:30. Okay. Porfa. Okay. Gracias. Gracias. Um, okay. Um, sorry guys, my a couple people just show up over here.
Just a casual moment of Spanish there.
Yeah, a little casual moment of Spanish. Yeah,
Fantastic.
for all of us who live in California.
It's pretty standard, I suppose. Yeah. Is it Mexican or Spanish? I suppose it's the same
Spanish.
thing, isn't it?
Well,
Sort of.
there's definite. So I definitely spoke Mexican Spanish
Different
there. Yeah,
dialect.
Right.
compa is not something you would really say in Europe. Uh, it's like friend, like buddy. You
Okay.
say compa, it's like saying dude, or way, same thing. It's like saying dude. Probably not gonna be spoken in Europe, like Castilian Spanish. So yeah, I noticed that, like, when I was in Spain, there's just little slang words. I was like, don't know what you just said to me. What did come again? Say again. So yeah, there's definitely a difference.
Spanish in Spain rolls more than Spanish in Mexico or Latin America.
And it's
It just flows differently.
got that like little lisp too.
Yes.
Yeah,
And you know
exactly.
Yeah.
why?
Yeah, they had a gay king or something, right?
We had a king that had a lisp, and the king,
Yeah.
in order to not feel bad about it, everybody spoke with a lisp to
Yeah.
make him feel like he was normal, and it stayed.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
I
just a
heard that.
forced lisp. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
so it's
my
like
God, and it stayed
like
forever.
and it's still like you still hear it. That's what I'm saying. And so it's like hard to, like, it's like with like D's, it'll pronounce like a th, like,
Mm.
yeah, it's weird. Same thing though, like, when you hear somebody from like South America too, it's a little
Okay.
different. Yeah. But you know what? I feel like English has more variation,
Mm.
honestly. I feel
Oh
like,
God, yeah.
yeah, I feel like even like English, like just in the States, has a larger, like, our accents are more. like way more pronounced.
Well, I can't understand half of what people in England talk about
Me
sometimes. If
either.
they're from a different area, I haven't got a clue. You think it's
Yeah.
bad. I haven't got a fucking clue. I will
No,
meet
it's why
people and
it's why I
I'm like,
always
what did they
ask
say?
you. That's why I even ask you, like, can you please speak English? Please. I'm trying to talk with you. I We can either do it in Spanish or English, but that's it. That's all I know. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah.
no, it's fascinating.
So
Yeah.
sorry to break that interlude there. No, I just asked him to show up later in the future so that we don't get interrupted again. Because I like to speak in my garage, and I
Okay,
didn't
yeah.
want to have like the sound of lawnmowers and everything in the background.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Nice,
sorry for
nice.
the interruption there.
That's all right.
But getting back to what we were discussing, because this is
No worry.
fascinating.
Mm,
We
bring
went
us
we
back.
we went to the stars. We went to the stars there,
Standard.
but I wanted to get back to that whole God concept though. And
Oh, yeah. Jeez,
your
man.
your
Seriously. And then we're
your
talking
daughter,
George Orwell as well, right?
yeah, your daughter's daughter and her daughter. Because here's
Mm.
what I think's going to really happen with all this, man. Like, we're going to have the Neuralinks, right? Which again, Elon Musk's already working on something like this, which means so are five other companies working on some kind of chip you're going to be able to put in your brain,
Mm.
which
So, hello? Oh, there you are.
will it be kind of, it'll be like this, man. What if you have an irregular heartbeat? That chip's going to pick it up. What if you have a lower oxygen level in your blood? It'll pick it up. Your ratio of red to white blood cells is off. Your liver's not producing a certain enzyme. Your magnesium levels off. Some kind of like diagnostic. You're gonna just constantly be under diagnostic test after diagnostic test.
See, I
And
quite like that. I already wear an Apple Watch and I very much enjoy all this.
you see what I'm saying? Like, just with the
Mm.
watch, like they're even making these mirrors now, right? You can look at the mirror and it kind of look at your skin tone and
Oh my God.
kind of pick certain things up, get your heart rate. Again, pick, your watch can kind of pick up, is your O2, do you have like the right amount of blood oxygen level,
Mm.
or
Oh,
like
yeah,
what,
yeah. That's part of
is
the
your heart
watch.
rate irregular?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be able to
Oh,
feed all that data back to, you know, um whoever your doctor is, or
mm.
an insurance
Ah,
company.
now that's the fucked up bit. No, see, that's the bit where it goes wrong, you see. I want all this
Yeah,
medical
see,
technology, I want it to be private, and I get to choose what I share.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
if my
yeah,
insurance
exactly.
premium goes up because I have the fucking extra cheeseburger on a Friday night,
Yep.
that's bullshit.
Well,
This
this
is
is the problem with collectivism, right? Because then they're gonna, then it's gonna be like, well, if you smoke, if you eat that third piece of bacon, or you cut too big a piece of cheesecake or something, it's like now
mm.
you're in trouble, because you're gonna have, the nanny state watching you all the time.
Oh, dude, no.
Um, and it's inside your brain at that point, right? So then how long is it going to be until we have like brain hackers? And again,
Mm. Well, they
this
worry
isn't
about
going
that
to,
with no, because they worry about that now already, don't they? With home automation, you can be trapped in your own home in theory, right? You can have systems lock up your doors or like mess with your lighting or heating, or you can in theory, right? That's the problem. This technology starts to cause, and and now on a national level, you've got infrastructural issues. You've got hackers now. You've got to worry about your state, your country, having somebody hack into like a nuclear power plant and then shut down some safety feature
yeah,
and cause an enormous,
which
huge grid outages or natural disaster.
we did a study in the US where we like already know our grid's totally compromised.
Right,
100% compromised at this point. Like,
right.
so, that's already a reality.
Mm,
That's
oh,
just already,
yeah.
so who knows what that means.
I keep losing you. Can you?
Who knows what that means in the future, like, who knows if that's water water systems get spoiled, or just power
Mm,
goes out, whatever, like that's going to be an absolute reality.
interesting. But that's
Yeah,
it, going
it's
back to the good, but sorry, yeah. So there's so many things floating around. We're just, I'm sorry, I'm a
it's
bit
easy to jump
mad.
around, I know.
It is. But going back, just thinking again about the idea of a single voice where you get all your questions and answers from, because you would not need, because it's
It's going
inevitable,
to
and
be
of course it'll
that'll
happen.
be the voice of God.
It'll be the
Yeah.
voice of God, yeah. And
And
you don't bother to do any more research because nowadays we already don't. Now we already,
that's
you won't
what
go to
I think the
Google.
danger is.
Right. So right now you go to
Yeah.
Google, you get your personalized results. Or you don't even go to Google, you just go onto like Twitter or Facebook or something, and then you get your this is the echo chamber problem, wasn't it, that we know about.
Well,
Because the algorithm
remember,
wants
well,
to
the
give you more
the
of what you
echo
like, right?
chamber. Well, and it's why like politics is getting way more polarized and stuff too,
Mm.
for sure, because of
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
But like, think about this. Think about when you were a kid.
Hmm.
Remember how many like numbers? Remember when you were 15? You met a
Yeah.
girl at school
Hmm.
and you got her number.
Yeah.
The last thing in the world is you're gonna forget. I mean, fuck. They used to have songs, right? Jenny, 7265409. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
like
dude. Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the last thing you would do is like forget a phone number. You
Mm.
know what I mean? And now, other than my number, let me see. Other than my number,
Yeah.
Andrea's
No,
number,
I couldn't tell you Anna's.
uh,
I couldn't tell you anyone's
and
number but
my
mine.
brother, and I know my brother's number. Okay, so I
Right.
know three phone
But you're
numbers.
doing well, man.
I know, I know
That's
three.
two
I
more
know,
than me.
yeah. So I know three phone numbers where in the past, like I knew all my friends. Again, it was
Yeah.
just like, oh, I'm gonna call Andrew. Da, da, da. There was
Yeah, you picked up the
no
phone and just
phone book
dialed it.
thing.
No, no,
Yeah, you
no,
just
no.
dialed it.
Yeah.
So I think this whole thing with like having some fucking implant that's just going to give
Mm.
me instant answers on
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Oh my god, we really are going to be idiocracy, where just no one knows anything. But at the same time, maybe not, because now we're all going to be super geniuses too.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? When
So
your brain is freed up from having to do a lot of the stuff it used to do, what does it open up for new? Because it's all very well to go down that negative slide of oh dear, it's all going to be too easy. Oh,
right.
we're going to have to. What are we going to do?
But
We're all
we
going to be
we
this
are
and
going to
that.
be connected to a compendium of all human knowledge though. So,
Mm.
really like everyone's going to be, again, think of all the knowledge that's on the internet along with all the smut, but like you're just going to have that floating around in your brain.
Mm.
Like you'll just be connected to that. So,
Yeah.
are we all at that point just on the on the right side of the bell curve? Is just everyone just is just everyone like, a
Do you know?
150 IQ?
Well, maybe, but do you know what my concern would be? Was that there becomes a unified single version of everything. Because the moment you've got free will to choose, you can read different sources, you can read different accounts, you can read different, historical texts, documents, speeches, whatever, and you can have an opinion that might differ from somebody else's. Now, you might not spend a lot of time doing that particularly, but you certainly have the freedom to do so. If there is
Yep.
just one voice that you just ask the question and get the answer, we're all going to have a completely homogenized view of the world. And there's not going to be consent, dissent amongst that. There's not going to be anyone who says, well, actually, I've read this book and I think it's this, because you're going to stop
Yeah.
bothering. You're just going to get the answer and just take it as read. Why would you
You'll
bother?
just have what the standard answer
Yeah,
is,
because we
right?
already somewhat
Well,
do
and then
that.
who's in charge of that
And
then?
who's in
So is
charge
it
of
just
that?
some algorithm?
Right.
Is it just,
Exactly.
is it a person
Mhm.
manipulating that? Like what?
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy,
Yeah.
because that's power now.
It
Now
is
you live
power.
in people's brains.
Yes.
Hey
And
Joe, just so you know, this concept was done in an Outer Limits episode in the '90s, and I was just looking it up. It does not end well for humanity. Let
okay,
me tell you.
yeah,
Of
it
course,
doesn't
it was
end
in the
good.
outer limits.
Of
Beautiful.
course,
Let's
I
just
miss
say
Outer Limits. That was a great
the
show.
computer turns off at one point, and everybody's like baby minds because
Right.
they
Well,
depended. So I'm just saying,
well,
for 30 years later, we've been warned 30 years ago by the
dude,
Outer
but no,
Limits.
no, no,
Thank you,
no,
Outer
no, no,
Limits
no. I'm
again.
sorry, but H.G. Wells did this with the time machine.
Right. Well, of
Uh huh.
course. Yeah. Of
Uh
course.
huh.
Yep.
With Morlocks and the
Yeah. And
or
the
the
Eloy.
yeah
The
whatever
Yeah,
Eloy.
yeah,
Eloy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
lived
Eloy,
that
yeah.
perfect
And this was
existence.
what
hmm
1895.
Yep.
He warned us about
Yep.
this,
Yep.
and that's
God,
exactly it. Yeah,
H.G. Wells.
you go
Yeah.
for. I love. The Time Machine. That was such a
It's
powerful
such,
story for me.
oh my God. It's one of those stories that like I probably think about every week.
Mm.
Um, Probably. I love it. Love it. I love the old movie. I love the new movie. I love the book. I love everything about it.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's so fucking powerful because, dude,
yeah.
that's 130 years ago, and it's becoming true now. The idea, for people
Mm-hmm.
that haven't read the book, the idea is that, this inventor comes up with a time machine, goes forward sufficiently far into the future, some unknown tens of thousands of years, many, many millennia, and he arrives in a future which originally, it's to start with, it feels like it's an idyllic paradise. Everyone's sitting around, no cares in the world, and then at
It's
lunchtime, food just
paradise.
arrives, and it
Everyone's
seems to be paradise.
beautiful. They're
Everyone's
all
beautiful.
sleeping with each other.
Yeah, it's all
It's
great. And
amazing.
all of a
Yeah.
sudden, a weird sort of event occurs, and everyone just sort of stands up and starts walking in a single direction like lemmings toward this cave entrance. And they all just do it without being able to stop themselves. And that once the cave door closes, everyone sort of snaps back round and carries on as they were. But people have disappeared down into the cave, and he's like, "What the hell just happened to these people?" And he cares really, is because his time machine's disappeared. It's gone. It's been dragged into the cave, and he says, "Well, I need to get
Yep.
my time machine. I must go and find out what happened." And it turns out that this overlord culture, these people that had gone underground when humanity had split, and a lot of people had gone underground to be able to survive the horrible climate or the nuclear fallout or whatever. It become kind of these grossly, horrible mutated versions of humans. But they realized that the children, if you like, above, these carefree idiots that they could just sort of provide for, could become their slaves, their workforce, their food even. And they would therefore raise them and look after them like happy dopey cows, these cattle that were just free to roam around the fields above and do whatever they wanted. And when they needed feeding or they needed extra work doing, they'd soak them up and bring them in, and that was the end of it. And they didn't care, just like cows have got nothing to say about it now, nor do the humans in the future. And he decides, eventually, and he falls in love with one of them, and he decides to go back and get a book. We never know which book it is, to bring to the future and to try to change it, to try and sort it out, because he sort of tears it apart, doesn't he? But what
Yeah.
an interesting idea, because that's sort of what we're talking about here in 2025. We're talking about the
Yep.
concept that a single voice will tell us all the things, will provide us all the answers, provide us all the food and the clothing and everything else. We'll become completely dependent on it, much like we are already to some extent now. We'll do whatever it says. There'll be
Jeez.
no stuff happening, and there'll be a ruling elite which does all that and just goes great. Yeah. Um, Holy shit. And the question I have
Yeah.
is, I wonder, is it going to be quite as bad as that? Because in theory, right here it is, right? If you are a billionaire today, you can have everything done for you, and the lifestyle is unimaginable. You think you understand what a billionaire's lifestyle looks like. You don't. You do not understand. But the hedonism that you will not see, the ability to have everything in the wildest fantasy. If you really understood how good a billionaire's lifestyle is, it would be revolution right now. But now, if in theory that means right now, what that means is inequality means that there are people who in the third world, let's say, or even frankly in the first world, live a very, 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 very horrible life in comparison, struggling to find enough food, are struggling, to have any kind of luxuries and so on. Although, of course, except for those luxuries, we've all now taken so much for granted, like in theory, a hot shower. I mean, there are people that fall off the bottom of even that rung and who are genuinely homeless and can't even have a hot shower. But let's say, a person who has the worst possible life today, still has a roof over their head. They don't have to freeze to death at night. They still have a shower in the morning. They might not eat very well in terms of health and nutrition, but they eat. And if they've got nothing else to do, at the very least, they can watch Netflix and they can play a video game or something like this. So relatively speaking, incredible luxury. If not,
Our
if not a
our
kind of
our poorest citizens have two TVs and iPhones now.
okay,
So yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So now,
Right.
now, 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 let's say, but of course, there are millions, billions of people who live on a bowl of rice a fucking day. Still have to sort of walk for
Yep.
hours to bring some water back for their family. The children are dying of diseases left, right, and center, and it's truly fucking miserable. So, but let's just say though that you can end up with a world where, okay, yeah, we have this future vision where we're just listening to this one voice, we are this one thing and everything. But if in that world the controlling forces are doing something, okay, well, good for them, because if we can level it up so that everyone who has got this stuff, we're not getting literally eaten, we're not getting literally enslaved
Yeah.
anymore.
Right.
Machines are doing all the work, right? um everyone's got automation and so on. Everyone's benefiting from all the technology and the modern medicine and everything else because it's become so ubiquitous, it's very simple. No one has to go without. Well, isn't that actually, isn't that a good thing? Because, well, what's left? How much better of a life can these billionaires then have? And it really, so is it necessarily a problem? What
Well,
when there is only this kind of homogenized version of the truth, as long as someone's suffering, surely, what's the problem? Interesting,
this gets
interesting,
this gets back to that like this gets back to what I was talking about before, just that theme of, luxus and decadence. And I'll tell you this, because I've been in my life, I've been able to peek through that keyhole and see the life of billionaires. These, like,
Mm,
in particular, that, when I was saying like an hour ago, that house I worked on in Hancock Park.
okay.
Um, look, these people, at one point I had to pull off that job, because this was in 2015. So Barack Obama was president.
Okay.
Um, the missus of that house was actually an ambassador to, God, what was it? Was it Barbados, maybe, or Jamaica? Anyway, she ended up getting fired because she only like showed up to work for like 40 days or something. So the
Mm,
inspector general had her fired. But they had donated so much money to, the Obamas, that, you just get thrown an ambassadorship to one of these countries that doesn't, really matter. And we had to pull off because they were going to do like a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. This is like when Hillary was running against Trump.
mm,
So, like the Obamas were coming over, and then, Hillary Clinton was coming over. She was, she'd been the Secretary of State. So, like, the Secret Service had to, like, bag the house, and of
oh
course,
my
they
God.
don't want to have like hammers and knives there and stuff, right? All the stuff we use on a job site.
Mm,
So we had to like pull off for a couple weeks so they could, secure everything. And, I don't even know what that protocol is, but I'm just trying to paint the picture of like this is the kind of like level of influence and wealth that these people had. All right. They were
mm,
like the 10th or 15th like biggest donors to the Obamas. And so very, very rich, very, very rich.
yeah. Okay. Okay.
He runs, he's a Netflix executive. She was the daughter of like a Motown executive. So these people, very wealthy.
Mm,
And I gotta tell you, like, they were probably one of the happier couples that I had seen in that realm.
mm.
And I would mark their life as miserable.
Really?
Like, yeah, yeah. They had money for sure, but um, just from like what I could see, like their marriage did not look like a marriage I would want to be in.
Mm,
Um, and it was like each of their probably, second, third, fourth marriage.
mm,
Kids from the previous marriages, they were very unhappy, very, very unhappy kids.
mm.
Like miserable,
Wow.
miserable, and I even just remember like one time seeing one of the kids come and like and talk to the mister. And I remember like it just like like it broke my heart. Actually, he was grossly overweight, really, really overweight. And he just had this aura about him that I could only describe as sad, just
Mm,
sad. And you felt it the second you got around him. You felt it, like,
mm.
it was just infectious. You
Wow.
know what I
Okay.
mean? And
Okay. God
he
damn.
just felt heavy. And I don't mean like like, yes, he was heavy, overweight, but like, you know what I mean? Like just like this emotional energy was really heavy, and it just kind of would like, it would hit you, and it would just. I remember one time he was like, "Hey, Dad," like he wanted to hang out with him, and he was just like, "No, son, we can get together tomorrow or something." And I remember the way he walked away and like went upstairs like with his head hung down. It like made me
Oh.
want to just break out into
Oh
tears.
my God.
Like really, like it made me just want to fall down on the ground crying,
Bloody hell.
because it was just like, these they have money, and
Mm.
yes, they have like all the luxury that money can buy, but that's it. Everything else is a absolute train wreck. And not all, okay? Because there was also another client that I had who lived in a in an area called Beverly Park, which is like most people in LA have no clue this place even exists. Okay? There's no signs for it. There's no there's no, like, you just have to kind of know how to get there.
Yeah, I know those
And
kind of places.
I would call it the Beverly Hills of Beverly Hills.
Okay,
And
yeah, no, there's a couple of
and
those kinds of
you,
places down
y
here.
yeah,
Mm.
you have to like go, you have to go up this like little two-lane street
Hmm.
off of another kind of hidden street called Benedict Canyon, and you have to
Right.
go up this thing, and it's like you go up this long mountainous street, then you have to go through a gate where the only way to get through that gate is if you've been like you have to have prior approval. And then even when you have that, they still call in and make sure you're legit, you know.
Wow.
And then once you get through that, you go through another gate where the same thing happens again, just
Okay.
in case things fell apart, in between the time of you going through the first gate. And like, so
Okay.
the house I'm working on, like next door to it is Rod Stewart. Across from there is Justin Bieber, Denzel Washington's. Or I mean, it's just like you
Wow.
know every person there. Okay, like you know
The
everyone's
household
name.
names.
Yeah,
Right.
you know. So
Damn.
um,
Damn.
this family that I worked for, was astonishing because they were happy.
Mm.
They were like a normal family. The kids were like well-rounded, um,
Mm.
happy kids. She had been like a model in her previous days, and she was married to like an like an old uh, back in the '90s, like a rap star. Um,
Mm.
and again, like you would probably like know who those people are. And
Mhm.
she had remarried to this guy who was like a banker. He like ran pretty much like ran Goldman Sachs for like Southeast Asia. So, incredible wealth. Again, that house was like fuck, man. That house was incredible. It was like a 30,000 square foot house.
Oh,
And
bloody hell, it's like a small town.
yeah, yeah. And then like in the backyard, there was like it was a movie theater. It's just it was like a there was like a movie theater, but then around it there was like just like another den. And I mean, like that whole thing itself was like bigger than my house. Like just, and that was just kind of the like, that was the playroom, you know. um and again, just everything just looked so incredible. That's the only family I ever worked for that I would say was like happy, where like they were a happy family.
Mm, okay.
And they weren't like, they didn't have like personality disorders. And they seemed to, like, again, like the kids seemed happy, the kids seemed well rounded. And dude, I had seen like everything. I saw one kid at one lady's house, like she wasn't like famous. She had just, I had always said she divorced really good. um
Okay.
she she divorced like this like stockbroker guy. And like got like 50 m's out of it. And she was like one of, like, compared to the other clients, like not in the same league as the other types of people I would work for. But like even her, like I remember one time, like it's like the only time I ever saw her make her kid breakfast. And I remember, oh my God. She brings him his breakfast, and the kid took the tray and threw it at her and then like cussed her out. And I was just like, what? You know what I mean? Just like, like I could never imagine, you know what I mean?
Uh,
And then like doing that like in front of a stranger, you know what I mean? Like I was in the room.
my
It's just like,
God.
so it's just like wild shit. Like, can you just imagine your kid throwing a tray of food at you when there's like a
No.
complete stranger in the house?
Dude, whether or not
No.
there
You
is,
know,
no, but no. Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
but like I'm just saying, like, that was just like the norm,
Wow.
so on the one hand, yes, I totally hear what you're saying on the wealth stuff. I do, but there's more to the story. And because
Well,
I think what it is
yeah.
a lot of times is these people, they just ignore their families, and dad's away making money or mom's away making money, and just, the kids get raised by
Well,
every one of these houses, by the way, there's more staff than family.
well,
Everyone.
yeah. Yeah. Now here we go. That's interesting. And that once you see, there's a few things there. You see, now there you go. So just in my utopian future vision, then dad isn't away making money, nor is mum. Nobody has to make money because
Right.
the system's already full of everything. The staff, well, in theory, all the modern automation and everything, and all of these technologies which have replaced everyone's need to do everything. There's nobody left in the
Sure.
world that would voluntarily do anything menial, right? So somehow we have technology for taking care of all that. So I mean,
Yeah,
so
true.
you're back to kind of like the true utopia somehow is that there doesn't have to be inequality for the few to have a wonderful life. Because the current system is really fucked, because we have to have this huge inequality thing. Some people have to do all the horrible work. Somebody has to go out there and collect the rubbish every day. Somebody has to,
Well,
you know,
and it is a problem.
yeah.
It really is a problem. It's at the point where, like, uh, not only am I super into history, but I guess these old writers. There was a lot of it before World War II. Arnold Toynbee, Oswald Spengler. Kind of like the prophets of doom. We were talking about last time. Sir John Glubb.
Mm,
Even but Glubb wrote after World War II. But I just feel like there was a lot of work was done on this on the like the civilizational cycles
mm,
and like cycles of empire and stuff.
mm,
And um, this is one of those, like, it gets into that where the decline, like
mm.
the decline that comes as a result of it's the dog that caught the car,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? It's like the dog doesn't chase the car anymore because the dog caught the car. So there's like no more drive. There's no more like
Mm,
purpose now. And I feel like culturally, civilizationally, like I feel like
mm,
with that amount of wealth, we have a certain section of society that's gotten there, and then the rest, everyone else, like, and this is really discussed with another another more recent writer, this guy Peter Turchin, who has like this civilizational cycle, and he predicts when there's going to be a revolution or when there's going to be a civilizational collapse, and the things that he bases it on is one, like that gap, like that big wealth gap between between like the 1% and everyone else.
mm,
And then when there's what's called elite overproduction. And right now we've hit that level of elite overproduction where, universities are spitting out more and more what would be cultural elites. And you create a system, like, this is the biggest indication throughout all of history when there's going to be a society revolting, whether it's the American Revolution, Russian Revolution, French. When you have an entrenched elite, okay, there's an elite class that's been ruling things, but now you have competing elites that aren't part of that class, right?
mm,
It's very rare in history where there's a revolution that is done by like an actual peasants revolt. There's really only two that I can even think.
okay.
socialist,
Sorry, I lost
right?
you.
And this is always it is, right? Oh, sorry. I was
I,
just saying it's always an educated upper middle class fighting against, George Washington wasn't some poor peasant, right? He was he was an upper class elite, right? He was fighting
mm,
against the entrenched elites. Lenin was not some, poor worker. He's
mm,
a highly educated lawyer. So again, it's always that. Robespierre wasn't some poor farmer in France.
no.
Again, he was a highly educated lawyer who, got was able to get people on his side and got a bunch of other elected assembly people and clergy and other people on his side to overthrow the French king. So it's never just like the peasants. And
No.
right now we have in America, at least, and I would imagine even in the West writ large,
Mm,
we we have everyone goes to college now, gets a degree, and when they come out, there's an expectation that, well, hey, since I went and I got a degree,
mm,
I feel like I'm kind of owed my place in elite society, especially certain kinds of degrees, right? Especially, people in like certain fields, like, legal or medicine. There's these certain um, kind of like classes that there's an expectation. If I went to medical school, I'm kind of owed this. If I went and passed the bar, I'm kind of owed this. And when you get to a point where there's just like an overproduction of those, that's when you cross that line into revolution. It's
mm,
a really really interesting indicator
mm.
for that, and it makes sense. It makes sense because those are typically the people that will lead other people, right?
Yes. Mm,
So, and again, it's just how it's always been done. It never gets framed that way, right? We as Americans, we like to think of, you know, uh, what's that movie, like The Patriot, right? Where you have like Mel Gibson, he's just a humble old farmer, and that mean British bastard shoots his son, and it's like it's not really how things went down. John Hancock was the richest man in the colonies. George
right.
Washington was
Okay.
the richest man in Virginia.
Mm,
you know
mm,
and it's like they wanted to run things. It's our turn to run things. So, like, our again, it doesn't make for a great, like, inspiring story, though, to say, well, instead of these rich people running things, let's have these other rich people run.
no.
That's not going to
No.
inspire
No.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Mm,
so, yeah. Anyway, I bring that up just to say I feel like we're somewhat at a point like that right now, where we've overproduced a lot of elite aspirants. And again,
mm,
like, that's the whole, at least for this one theory,
mm.
um that's like the catalyst that kicks off revolutions, which we'll see.
Interesting.
The other thing too is, uh, there are other indicators for that too, and one thing is, like, I always feel like we're also very docile now in the modern
I was
world
going to
because
say,
life is good.
yeah, we have a lot of
Yeah.
opiates for the masses now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And like, people don't revolt when they have full bellies. People are happy to revolt when they're on an empty stomach, though.
Oh yeah,
So
right. We're only like 24 hours of no food away from absolute anarchy or something, isn't it?
it's something like that. Yeah, I think it's like
3 days. Yeah.
every city in America is like 2 weeks away from starvation. I think something like that. Pretty. It's on a razor's edge when you think when you think about it. 2 weeks isn't a long time, and if you have an event
Oh
like a
no,
COVID again,
nine. It's
that
no. It said that we're 9 meals away from anarchy 3 days.
Oh, 9 meals. 9 meals. Okay.
That's it.
9 meals
If
for me.
we had no food deliveries, no stock
It's a lot less
shelves.
than 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, it's just 3 days. It's just 9 fucking meals, man. Hey, apparently, once you have that, everything goes wrong, and you just have full madness, full societal collapse. We have to have full bellies, 9 meals without being able to know about everything, and all the stuff, all the social structure, all the rules, all of the everything. Everyone would just start looting, smashing things. There'd be no more control systems. Nobody would listen to any power. People would just say no, fuck you, because after 3 days without food, it all breaks down.
Isn't it?
Everything.
Isn't it wild how like how fragile it is? Like I again, I think back to like COVID. I remember the first day when like COVID was kind of like here. I
Hmm.
remember driving to work, and for whatever reason, I had to stop at Walmart. I think I was probably grabbing some coffee cream. I think that's what I was going in to get. And I just remember seeing this line that was like a quarter mile long, like for people like waiting to get into Walmart, presumably to go buy toilet paper. But um, but it like gave me this really uneasy feeling. Like it's like a really just really unsettling. Seeing so many people. It's dark. It's like 5 a.m. and just seeing all these people standing out there, and so it's really scary. It was like scary, man. Like, okay, something's gonna pop off here. And man, it wouldn't have taken much at that moment to like see a full on riot, or at least where I was.
Yeah.
It was a very unnerving feeling, and that fuck, man, people like where you live, people win a soccer game, they torch the fucking city down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Mm, mm,
or they
mm.
well, win or lose. I don't really know. Seems like they just torch the city.
When the
Period.
Dodgers won in LA, they freaking people went. I mean, they weren't. It wasn't a home game, but they caused pretty big chaos in LA when they won.
Oh, what was that? Like
I mean,
2 years ago, right?
no, that was recent. That was this season when they won. They were like rioting and catching buildings on fire in LA. It wasn't even a game in LA, but when they won, the Dodgers
That
fans
was this
were
year.
causing. That was this year. They were
Okay.
causing chaos.
Yeah.
I have a friend that's like a big Dodgers fan, and he was like, "I'm so ashamed of my team fans, like fellow fans right now." I'm
Right.
like, so, but yeah, I mean, but it is more the hooligans than than
Well,
baseball
well, you
fans.
know what though, man? It's like even that is pretty tame. Like when you go back east, I feel like it's a lot worse, and like Boston or Philly. But then
Yeah.
nothing
Mhm.
touches England
That's
though.
why it
Nothing
threw us
touches
off.
you
It
guys.
doesn't usually
Yeah.
happen in LA like that.
Mm-mm.
When that kind of rioting, when a team wins, doesn't usually happen around here, so it threw us all off.
Yeah. Again, it's still nothing compared to when like Manchester United wins or
Exactly.
loses. Like that. You guys get down over there, Owen.
Mhm,
Plus, everyone's drunk all the time, so
mhm. Oh yeah, exactly. We like to drink in the day. You call it day drinking. We just call it drinking. We
yeah, we just
just
call it
it's not.
Wednesday,
It's not.
right?
It's just when. Yeah, we all go down. A lot of people. I mean, these days it's getting less and less possible because of cost. But we will absolutely, as a matter of course, go down the pub and have a pint or two at lunchtime if we can. No problem.
I
And there's
love
nothing odd
that.
about it. There's nothing odd about it. There's this idea that you label a drink before nighttime a day drink. I've been day drinking. Like we don't
Yep,
have that term. Day drinking is a very alien concept. What do you mean day drinking? You mean a drink
right.
you have in the day? Well, when else are you going to fucking drink?
Well, when else are you
Oh,
gonna
at
fucking
night.
have?
Like,
Yeah.
why are you waiting till not? What? What's this bullshit about only drinking at night?
Yeah.
What?
Where's this rule? You have to
Yeah.
wait until after 5 or 6 o'clock. What
What
the hell are you
bullshit is
talking
that?
about?
Yeah, the pub's
Yeah,
open at
right.
11, and that's late enough.
I
I mean,
love
I
it.
grant you that you don't wake up and have a drink for breakfast. That's weird. But 11 o'clock, that's good enough. You have a cup of tea, and then you think, right, time for the pub then. You know,
Okay, then
go
it's
to
time.
lunch about 12 o'clock. You know, have a couple of jars. You know,
I
lovely.
love.
Yeah.
All right, time for the pub then. Okay.
That is absolutely it, man. Yeah, and it would be, and I think from what I've understood, it would be a little unseemly if I was in LA and I said to you, Joe, it's lunchtime, bro. Let's go down and have a couple of
Oh yeah.
pints. You'd probably
No,
be like,
you would get looks like, are you okay? Do you
really?
like, yeah, like, are you?
Jesus.
Got to keep a little Listerine in the car,
Yeah,
so you know
yeah.
before you go back to work.
Right.
Just
And you have to,
it's
you
like,
have. This is where the image as well, isn't it, of the brown paper bag thing comes from,
Right,
right? Because
right.
you're not allowed to be.
Exactly.
You don't want to be seen to be drinking either on the street. It's not. You're not allowed to. Whereas we can just walk down the street with a can of beer in our hands if you want to. There's no
it
problem.
depends on the state in the United States.
Right.
Different states have different
It's still
rules.
unseemly though. It is. It's
Yeah,
still like it may be legal in some places, but it's like
doesn't stop me.
it's very you're turning heads. You're turning heads, you know, like it's
Mm.
not a normal thing. It's one thing like I loved like when I was in Mexico, you know, every you'd go in somewhere and they'd like ask you all the time if you wanted to drink to go. And I was just like, this is a foreign concept to me. What do you mean to go? You mean I can walk outside with this? You know, land of the free, right? Go have a beer on the sidewalk and watch what happens in the land of the free. You know, it's very very
Wow.
funny.
Wow. But the thing is, it's even more so in Europe. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, we've all seen Pulp Fiction, right? And we know
Mm,
when they're having a conversation in the very beginning, in the opening scene, and they're
the
driving down,
best.
right? And they're talking about how, and he says, yeah, I mean, in McDonald's, you can go into McDonald's and you can order, you can have a beer. And then he's
Yeah,
not talking about some paper cup. He's talking about you can actually have a glass of beer, and you can
I
go out
love
and
it.
move. You can go to the cinema or the movie theater, as you might call it, and you can have an actual fucking beer. And of course you can. Like, I mean, actually, that's more and more. But over in England, you don't do that. You don't have beer in England. Yeah, in a cinema you have Coke and
Right,
Sprite and
right.
everything else. But in
That
France they think
actually
nothing of
just
it.
started. That
Yeah,
just started here. Yeah,
it's a way for them to increase the
yeah,
concessions. And all of those actually have to have a liquor license like a restaurant. So there was a lot of people, especially in places like LA, where liquor licenses are something people are fighting
yeah.
over. So that and only a region of the area and is allowed to have a certain amount of liquor license per like zone.
No
So
way.
they're
Again,
a
you
hot
got to
commodity.
remember, Owen, this country was founded by Puritans.
Yeah,
Okay.
Puritans, right,
So,
there it is,
you
exactly,
know,
puritanical,
it's like
yes.
there's still these like hangovers from that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I always think like, you know, what Dunk's talking about there, is like ABC licenses where, you know, each city can only have like a certain number of them, you know, and people actually a long time ago, I was gonna buy a bar, not because I wanted the bar, I just wanted the license because I wanted to get the license so then I could sell the license. The 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 building itself was just kind of a side benefit. You know, I wanted the actual liquor license, and that's like you know there's a whole like cottage industry around that where there's like businesses that just go around buying liquor licenses and reselling them because there's just only a certain amount allowed. It's pretty wild, man. Again, like for European ears to hear that, it's probably just like, wow, that's not how things are done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely.
It's kind of weird on Hollywood, Hollywood Boulevard, where it's like Bar City. You can go into a 7-Eleven, like, if you don't know what that is, or I think they have them over there, but they're convenience
Oh
stores.
yes.
You go into a 7-Eleven, which is a liquor, basically a place to go buy beer,
Mm.
and they don't sell beer because they couldn't get a liquor license, a convenience store, because there's too many
No
bars on the
way.
street.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's too many bars on the street, so the convenience stores can't get the liquor licenses.
That's okay. Wowzers. There you go.
yeah.
Hmm.
Interesting.
I
Well, I was
know.
just
They're
thinking about things, but England isn't all that. I mean, there are some funny old paternalistic things about England still, like in terms of alcohol. Because let's say, I mean, like one thing that's really interesting about Europe is a lot of them will go out in the evening when we're all kind of going to bed. Honestly, like I've had German friends, French friends, especially Germans, God, they will go out to enjoy a night out, and they will be going to clubs opening at 11 p.m. 10 p.m., 11 p.m. That's when they'll be going, and that's when they'll be starting to have their night out, and
Like
they'll eat,
starting, yeah,
and they'll eat
yeah,
at 10
That
p.m.
happens here too,
Okay.
especially like in party areas.
Right,
Like
but this is a
starts at like
culturally
11.
right. This is a culturally quite normal thing. Whereas over here, I never heard anything like it. Because we over here, you've probably heard, time, gentlemen, please, and everyone suddenly run, or last orders, right? Bell rings,
right.
you run to the bar about 10:30 to 11 o'clock. Kind of the cutoff, and it's you've got clubs now, nightclubs, which allow drinking much later, but a pub, last orders is 11 o'clock. And this actually
11
goes
o'clock.
back to
Yeah.
World War One. So it was the Defence of the Realm Act, and it was all rather
Ah,
dramatic, and exactly what it was. And it was about keeping munitions factory workers sober and productive.
right.
So
Interesting.
you couldn't buy drinks. You weren't even back then. You weren't even allowed to buy drinks for other people. There were no such thing as a round of drinks. You could only buy one for yourself.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and we used to have watered down beer and so on. But the idea was to stop factory workers getting hammered and showing up to make bombs with a hangover.
Wow.
And it's
Interesting.
yeah, it took us until, get this, 2005 until licensing laws were relaxed and pubs could start to apply to
Amazing.
stay open later. Yeah, but even now,
Amazing.
yeah, most of the time around here, like the pub in my road, all the pubs down the road here, they all have 11 p.m. That's it. 10:30, you hear the bell still, last orders, and that's it.
It's so interesting, man. Like there's some England has these like I don't even know what would you call it. Like there's just some again just like hangovers from the past that are
Mm,
still very much alive in England. Like I really feel it like along like kind of like class issues. You know how people are kind of people are you and I believe have spoken about this, or maybe I have with someone else, where there's definitely like a certain level of judgment that comes with people's like accents. Like, oh, he's
mm,
from this area and this is like a poorer area, or oh, that
mhm,
accent kind of denotes a richer area, like a higher class area.
mm,
Um, and again, just nothing. Well, to American ears, I always say this: American ears, if you hear someone with a British accent, we
mhm.
immediately add, 20 to 30 IQ points to them. If we hear
Wonderful.
someone with a Southern accent, we immediately deduct 20 or 30 IQ points.
Yeah.
And it's not fair, of course, because then there's like people like Shelby Foote who are just utter absolute geniuses, but they happen to have a Southern accent and, like, sorry, man.
Yeah, and then
Sorry.
we had a wonderful comedian who did a bit. His character was Tim Nice but Dim. Tim Nice but Dim, thoroughly bloody nice bloke, but absolutely fucking really, really stupid. And he was a proper British toff. So he was like, yeah, yeah, absolutely fabulous, brilliant. But he was an
Right.
absolute idiot. Dim as you
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
right?
Love it. Love it.
Tim Nice but Dim. Yeah.
Tim Nice but Dim. What a great name. Mm, that is Tim Nice but Dim. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it, mate. Well, hey man, I think we've kind of tripped around the world. We've went everywhere from talking about pub culture to AI and
Mm.
the future voice of the gods living inside our head.
Yes.
Um,
Very broad, very like. I'm thinking we should keep it a bit more practical going forwards, because otherwise we're just going to pontificate about the far future and no one's going to learn,
uh,
or get any
you
kind
know
of
what?
use out of this, right? Because we've got really lots of things we can impart, because that's a long way off, and I think we
You
should
know what?
probably land this a bit more and bring it back. Go on.
You know what? It's our show. We can do whatever we want.
Whatever the fuck
How
we
about that?
like.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
whatever the fuck we like.
Hell yeah,
Um,
baby.
90% of what we're doing here is to entertain ourselves.
It
If
is.
you like
That's a
it,
good
you like
point.
it. We would love you to come along. If not,
Indeed.
whatever.
Just before we
Um,
go, though, because I feel like you're writing it in, and that's perfect. We should. But the question I have for you, I just wanted to ask this one thing on the back of what we were just
oh
saying.
yeah, do it. I'm in no
What
rush.
happen? No, what happens in your neck of the woods on a Sunday?
Okay, so here's the thing. This is very much a okay. Nationwide, the country slows down for sure on
Mhm.
Sunday, just everywhere. Definitely regional though. So if you're you know, if you're in the South, in particular areas in the South, even more so, um, they'll even be like counties where there's like dry
Dry.
laws where you
Hmm.
can't buy alcohol. You can drink. You're not going to like go to jail if you drink, but
Mm,
you can't buy any alcohol. Again, these are like really regional things, and they're what they are is they're hangovers from like the 1870s. There's a big movement.
mm.
There's a big movement in the country. You've probably heard of Prohibition,
Yes.
where there was something called the Volstead Act. We even amended the Constitution for a while, where you
Mm,
couldn't sell or transport certain types of spirits. You would have to get like a kind of like the way they did that sham of medical marijuana for a while. You'd have to like go
mm.
to a doctor and have them write a prescription, and there's like whiskey prescriptions and stuff. Um,
Mm,
you know, so so before prohibition like kicked off, there's a really it was very much tied to the women's rights movement too. So this all kind of started. It started before the Civil War. It started in the like late 1840s,
okay.
where there was a movement. Again, it's very much tied to women's rights, women's voting,
Hmm.
um, and the two of them kind of married, and so especially in the South and in the West.
Eh.
Because after the Civil War, a lot of people moved from the South out to the Western states, where they would kind of bring, um, that movement out with them and start like dry counties. There were dry states, and like so for instance, like Montana, where there's like the very first uh, woman elected to the legislator before there was even a like universal federal. We hadn't amended the Constitution until 1920 to grant women's suffrage, but you had a woman elected to Congress in, I think, the election in 1912. So, a couple of these like Western states, and again, there's a big push to just make alcohol illegal. So
Right.
some of that is like hung over from that like 70-year battle that kind of went from roughly like 1848 to like 1920. And again, there's counties, there's regions where that is still very much a part of the local tradition. But just in general, and again, this is kind of like what I was talking about before, where it's like everyone here is a cultural Christian, right? Even if they don't
Okay.
believe in God. Sunday,
Yes,
the
yes.
country slows down.
Yeah,
It's just
interesting. And that's more than just
it's
alcohol, is it? That's for all things. Because the reason I ask is
yeah,
because we had,
everything.
in the UK, we had a very, very, used to be very, very strict Sunday everything, right? So we used to have until, it wasn't until the late 1990s that every shop really was just shut. Back, if you go back to like the 40s and 50s and 60s and so on, people would strictly stand by the idea that everything must close on a Sunday. And the
Hmm.
only thing you would do is you would go and you would have, you go to church, and then you'd pop off to the pub afterwards, about 11 o'clock, for a
Yep.
bit of a swift pint while the wife went home and cooked Sunday roast, and then you
Right.
all got
Right.
together, and that was how you spent your afternoon.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, even to this day, actually, so what we have now is we have most supermarkets or whatever you want to call it. What's the word? You guys call them supermarkets?
And
No,
supermarket. Yeah.
yeah,
Supermarket. Grocery store. Grocery
groceries,
store.
right?
And that's
That
even that's even a regional thing. So like
okay,
again, in some areas they'll call it supermarket, the market, grocery store,
Like soda or pop.
the store.
Regional.
right, okay.
Again, it's very very regional.
Okay, well, that
Yeah.
will on a Sunday. So right now, for example, what are we on Saturday? So I could easily pop out to the shops right now, and I could go and do my shopping. I could go and buy, milk and bin bags right now, no problem at all. It's 25 past 6 in the early evening, right? Whereas if fast forward 24 hours, couldn't do it. All the shops shut at 4 o'clock. 4
Yeah.
p.m. There's no more supermarket here, and it's Sunday trading rules, massively restrict. the amount of time you
Interesting.
can stay open, even to this day. Now, it used to be very, very strict, and it was seen as a horrible slide into the abyss that we ever should
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
changing that. You know, they really didn't like that. Some people were absolutely adamant that it should stay, and it's been very slow. But right up until the 1990s, we didn't have a single 24-hour supermarket. You guys have had 24-hour stores, shops, whatever you want to call them, for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah, but it's still yeah, yes, we've had them, but it's still that's
They're
not the
few and far
comment.
between.
That is not how things are done. It's just
Okay.
not. And in some, again, you've got to realize, like, it, there America was founded as 13 different countries, right? So
Yes,
like,
of course. Yeah.
people don't and again, like, now we've become a much more like unified country. Of course, the
Mm,
Civil War was the first step in that direction.
so,
So, like, people before the Civil War would have said, "Hey, I'm a Virginian, I'm a Georgian."
oh,
Now,
right.
after the Civil War, they say, "I'm an American." Okay, so
Wow.
that's the first real step in that, like, unification.
Mm,
And and especially when you go into older states, and like, where, so like Pennsylvania will have a lot of, again, it's a very old state, right? There's areas in Ohio and Pennsylvania where they still have like Amish people living, and so you'll get some areas where, it may not be a law because it wouldn't be able to be like held up constitutionally, because it would
okay.
kind of violate, like
Yes.
establishment clause. It would violate some, like, you know people commonly say separation of church and state. That's
Hmm.
actually not that. That comes from a letter. That's actually not in the Constitution. That comes from a letter Thomas Jefferson wrote. But like, what's legal is there's freedom of religion, and
Hmm.
then there's, in our Constitution, what's called the Establishment Clause, where the state cannot establish a religion. So, like,
Okay.
separation of church and state, again, that's not like a legal thing. That's
Once
from a letter.
again.
But
Okay.
but so, like, what it will be, though, is very unseemly. Okay, so, like,
Mm.
if you were in certain places of, Eastern Ohio, or um, Northern Kentucky, or, like, Southwestern Pennsylvania, it would
Mm.
be very, very unseemly if you opened your store on Sunday and you'd
Mm.
piss people off and no one would go to your store. Okay.
Wowzers.
And
Okay.
you would just go out of business because
Right.
you're going so against the tradition that,
Mm.
you would just kind of get ran out of town.
Got you.
So
Got you.
it's very much a regional thing. It's very, very much a regional thing now.
Mm.
um, you can be in somewhere in LA, right, where everyone here is, you know, postmodern, post-Christian, post everything. No one's gonna care. You know what I mean? No one's gonna
Yes,
care.
yes, yes.
So
Interesting.
if you're in a place where people sign their emails with pronouns, they're not gonna
Mm.
care. If
Right.
you're if you're if you're
Oh
in an old
God.
state,
Hmm.
it will, um, again, not violate the law, but violate local custom. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yes, I get you.
And
Yes, I get you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and again, it's very much where you're at. So, like, again, you can be in that same state. You could still be in Pennsylvania and be in Philly, where no one's gonna care. Okay, but now
Hmm.
you leave Philadelphia and you go out into the more rural areas, and now, you piss Jimbo off, and Jimbo's friends with everybody in that county, and now, you're never gonna, make a sell again, so you might as well just close your business down.
Well, it's very much a
So,
licensed thing here. I mean, you don't have it other than the supermarkets. I mean, like the Walmarts of the world, you know, like, which is kind of, we do have a Walmart-owned company in here. Asda is owned by Walmart. But yeah, it's only those massive ones. You don't get 24-hour shops otherwise. It's only the
well,
biggest,
and
biggest
what's
chains.
happened, like, like, it's funny you were saying the 90s, because, like, the 90s is, wouldn't you say, Dunk, that's kind of when things like that did start to change? Like, I
Yeah, it started in the
yeah,
90s, and then
yeah,
as things like, in all honesty, I think that what really shifted it was the Amazon culture, like like the idea of getting things so quickly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like when that started to happen, all of these other companies had to compete it, as they didn't do very well, but they honestly, but they all thought that they needed to compete with this, and
Yep.
that like next thing you know, you have like all the other ones trying to compete with Amazon,
Yeah.
also praying that Amazon just fails at the same time.
Yep. Yep. And
That was
along
well.
so like there's kind of like two or three cultural forces that I think hit at the same time. One is very much that internet Amazon culture.
Okay.
And then you also have this like all of our cities look alike now. So it used to be where you would go you would go somewhere. Love you, babe. You would go somewhere and this city has a certain feel to it, and the supermarket looks
Okay.
a certain way and it has a certain vibe. But now that everything now has been just been all like private equitied out. So now, so now like everything,
Okay.
whether you go to a city in Nebraska or a city in Northern California or Southern California, it
Mm.
just all looks the fucking same now. And
No
they're all
way.
the same. They're all the same, like uniform little open strip mall shops. And
Oof.
the
Oof.
mall in Northern California looks the same as the mall in Arizona. And
Wow.
like a lot of that like variety has slowly kind of died as like private equity and like there's this like
Mm.
private equity and like these companies like Bain Capital and McKinsey, like they kind of come in, they're called corporate raiders. And this started in the late 80s where they would come into a Home Depot, and at the time, Ace Hardware or Home Depot again would very much be trying to sell to its region in its local area, because at the time America was still very regionalized, and we still are to a certain degree, but it is slowly going away and becoming much more and more unified. And
Right.
and this is a big driver of what kind of made everything the same. Is you would have these like big like Wall Street companies come in, they would fire everybody, they would load the company up with debt and like kill it, just try to suck every dollar out that they can. They would
Mm.
standardize all the stores, everything, every little shopping mall looks the same. It's
Right.
all very cookie cutter
Right.
and very much lost its charm,
Hmm.
whereas you could go, you I mean, help me out here, Dunk. You know what I'm saying? Like like these things, like it really like this like
Mm.
sameness kind of
Yeah.
crept in,
Hmm.
where it's
I
like
get
all
it.
like the same.
I
Yeah.
get it. I get it.
Um.
Well, it's a people want to kind of recognize things that are and just be aware. Like if you don't recognize something, then you're not going to recognize. So everything started to become the same,
Mm.
right?
Yes, I suppose it's like McDonald's, isn't it? Everywhere. It's really funny,
Yeah.
actually. I remember.
Well, it's like the idea of franchises.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
my grandparents. Well, was it my grandparents? I think yes, they went. My mum tells me a story about when my grandparents went a long way, all the way to I don't know the Middle East, not the Middle East, Far East, I should say, and they were really unsure about where to eat, but then they saw a McDonald's sign and they were like, ah, yes, right, let's do that. And there they were, other side of the bloody world, having a Big Mac because they recognized it as something they knew what it was going to be. They knew what it was going to taste
See,
like, and
but
it's that
see
safety.
that's kind of missing the point a little bit, because so like that's been here from the 50s, right? There's been McDonald's everywhere, and whether you're in
Mm.
California or New
Well,
York, McDonald's,
but
McDonald's.
just
I'm
extending
talking
that
more about like,
concept, but yeah, making it
yeah, the
broader, the whole
general
thing.
landscape of a city.
Well,
Yeah,
that's kind
yeah,
of what I mean, but like on a grander scale, yeah,
yes,
creating
yes.
something that creates that, yeah, that as you say, that
Very
familiarity and that
uniform.
trust and uniformity, yes. So
Yeah,
wherever you
yeah,
go, there you are, kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah, yes,
I don't like it. I don't like it.
no,
I very much liked um, I very much liked how you felt like you were in a different place
mm.
when you went to a different state,
That's what I love about
and
traveling in general. You get to
yeah,
experience, in theory, you should find something else, something different. Which is why I tend to try to stay away from the tourist traps if I go places. I want to
right,
go and
right.
find something authentic. I want to see another version of what's possible, what life can be, what food can be. And you always want to go
Yep.
somewhere that the locals go. That's when, like any restaurant that opens up, if you have an Indian restaurant or a Thai restaurant or whatever, go to the ones where the Indian and the Thai people go. Because
There you go.
that's the thing. Because otherwise, you get a Western version, you get a homogenized, watered down version of it, and that's just not
The spice
fun.
of life is variety,
Yeah,
and
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, it's anyway, again, it's me just being my grumpy old man curmudgeon
Oh,
self,
of course. We're
that.
we're getting
Oh, and
grumpy all the
I had
time.
some family that lives in Enfield, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's not too outside of like a outer borough of London. And when I went and
Ah.
visited them, the best part about that was they would take me to all the places that they would go.
Mm,
I was like the only
For
American
sure.
in
yeah,
that freaking city, and I loved it. I
Yeah.
was like, people didn't treat me any differently because I just looked like any other person. I'd go out and have fun, and if I didn't open my mouth, they would have no clue that I wasn't one of them.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It was completely fine. And that was one of my favorite
Do
parts
you
of that
go there
entire trip.
frequently, Dunk?
I haven't been in a couple years, but I do try and go back as much as
I
I
didn't I
can.
didn't
But
realize you had family back there. That's cool, man.
yeah, I have family in London. I have family in Holland. I have family all over Europe. So actually, it's about Spain.
Oh,
Next time you
fantastic.
do it, let me know because I'm coming with you.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah.
that'd be
A lot of good
great.
stuff.
Obviously, I'll pop up, meet you guys. It'd be rude not to at that point. You'd be traveling all the way from bloody LA, and I'd just be an hour or two away. Fantastic. And it's actually the funny thing as well. London is a long way for me. I'm thinking it takes like 2.5 hours to get to London. That's ridiculous. Whereas you would still be in LA.
Yeah, exactly.
People in your
Exactly.
in your
Yeah.
fucking you commute for 2.5 hours. You know.
Well, yeah, I used to. So when I was, running my construction business, bro, I would, driving into work in the morning, as long as I left by like 5, it would be like an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes. But then
Mm,
driving back home was always a minimum of 2 hours,
God,
normally 2.5 or 3.
God,
So, every day was
fucking hell.
4.5 hours in the car.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, so I do not miss that at all.
Mm.
Dunk knows, man. Anytime you go, you can't go 30 miles here without it being, uh,
Dude,
yeah,
so you know where roughly where I'm staying right now with
yeah.
my family. Like I was working in Newport on
Oh
something
Lord,
that day that I shoot. It
yeah,
took me 2 hours to go that far. It was
yeah.
like what,
30
35
miles,
miles?
yeah, 30 miles,
Something
35
like that.
miles, yeah.
Yes, yes, it's funny actually. Yeah, it can take a long time. Yeah, we're getting that more and more here now. Cars are taking over, and everywhere that we used to be small and quaint and
Ah,
a quiet place
it's
is now it's
madness.
now. But yeah, everybody moved, everybody arrived in London, and then they decided London was getting too busy, and then they all had such an enormous amount of money because their properties all went up in value so much that they then all started to escape to the country and find little nice places to go and live. So then now all of a sudden you have this mass exodus from London of all these folks that have sold their wonderful properties, pushing the price up of properties everywhere else in the fucking country. And also meaning that traffic is now bloody everywhere because everyone went, oh, it's like I live in a little fishing, what used to be a little fishing village, kind of
Well,
thing. It's a small town. Oh, it's fucked.
the way I understand it, London is like its own little country,
Yes,
right?
basically, yes.
And yeah, okay,
Oh, very
yeah.
much so.
I
Yeah, London's unlike any other part of the country. It's very strange.
wouldn't you say, Dunk, that like, see, this is one thing I think it's a big misconception about California too. Like, I feel like LA is very much its own, like LA could be its own state. Number one, it has the population size to be probably the third or fourth largest state. Just,
Oh God,
just
yeah, of
LA
course, because
County on
LA,
its own.
yeah, because LA is part of California, and California is
Yeah,
fucking huge. You've got as
yeah.
diverse as things as Northern California and Southern California, utterly
It,
different, almost
I,
like
I
different
I've
countries.
always said like, and this is also changing, but it's still different enough to where I feel Northern and Southern California should not be in the same state.
Mm,
They're very, very different, very
right,
different.
right.
And California, honestly, is like at a minimum 3 different states. Um, Probably something more like 5.
Hmm.
That it could easily be cut into 5 or 6 different states. There's areas that are wildly different from, when you get up in like northern California. um i- and also, California really shouldn't be bisected north and south. It's really more of an east, in west and east bisection, where that's the biggest difference. So like along the coast is very, very different from once you get 30 miles, 35 miles inland. I mean, to where they don't belong in the
Once
same
you pass
state.
San Bernardino,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
like you basically you think, oh, I'm gonna go to like Arizona or something.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
a quick drive. It's the next state over. You forget about like the 3 hours of literally nothing you have to
Nothing.
drive
Yeah,
through.
Oh,
nothing. Yeah.
wowzers, wowzers.
And that county is the biggest county in the
Don't
country. San
don't miss
Bernardino.
the
Yeah.
gas station.
Yeah. Do
Like
not miss a
seriously,
gas
I
station.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Do not.
like
God.
one time I was trying to get to a gas station to get gas. I'm like, oh man, I'll just make it. You know, I had
Wow.
it was closed and it was like 15 miles to the next gas station. I'm like, crap. And I had to like pray that I would get there in time, and I did, luckily, but that was a gamble. But yeah, if you miss a gas station up there, you can get
You're in
screwed.
trouble. Yeah. Same in
Wow.
Northern California when you're going up to like Lake Tahoe. You know, if you like, once you get past a city called Placerville, you're kind of out of civilization now. And now you're going to be up in the sticks, and you better make sure you got gas. Um, because you don't want to run out of gas up on the mountain, and
Gosh.
you're just stuck. You're stuck, and there's no, there's more bears than people at that point. Again, like, the population in California is all along the coast, and again, if you're in Northern California,
Mm.
once you get away from the coast, then it's just all like forest. If you're in
Yeah.
Southern California, you get
Hmm.
away from the coast, it's all desert and high
Desert.
desert,
Wow.
and yeah, it's like,
There's a whole region called the high
yeah,
desert,
yeah,
My
actually.
God.
and another like Death Valley. They call it Death Valley.
Hmm.
Where it
I've heard
gets
of that.
really, really hot.
Right. Gosh. Well,
Yeah,
it's everything's so
it's no
fucking
joke.
big there, though. I mean, I get it.
It's big. Yeah,
It's a huge. I mean, it's unbelievably big. You don't realize how fucking big America is, actually. And then you realize that your state is bigger than my entire fucking
right,
everything.
right,
Because then over here, you can't. You wouldn't run out of fuel if you tried. I mean, you'd have to really be an idiot to manage it. I mean, and people do. I mean, they're stupid, but you can't ever be far enough away from anywhere like that. You could drive the
right.
entire breadth of the
Exactly,
country and and not run out of
exactly.
fuel if you were. It's fantastic. There are bits of the country where you'll get stuck in, up in the north, for example, and especially in Scotland, where you're just fucked. You end up in a mountain range somewhere and you've got no hope. But you'd have to have struggled. You'd have to have worked hard to get there in the first place. But most of the country, no, you're never very far away from anything. Not really. Although we do preserve a lot of countryside and a lot of nice areas and so
You
on. It's
do,
it's
you do.
intermittent.
Yeah.
But there's towns between towns. We had this when I was a kid. We had a friend of mine had from some students over staying with them for a while, and they were from somewhere in Eastern Europe. And they were saying that there much like you're describing, there's big chunks of nothing between places.
Yep,
And we
yep.
would go from the town I live in to the big town adjacent to me, which is where the cinemas are and so on, because we don't have any in this little town. And on the way there, they were like, "What's going on? How are we arriving into the town? We haven't not left the last town yet, have we?" And we say, "Yes, yes, we've just passed through this town and this town." And they said, "What? That's extraordinary. So there are towns between towns then?" It's like, yeah, yeah. There's never really any gap. It's just the next bit of a town becomes the next town becomes the next. Yeah, and it blew their minds that there was because we packed so much stuff in. You know, but we also have, yeah, lots of lovely preserved. 'Cause I live on the edge of a forest, a very big national park. Well, not big in your sense of big, but we have a lovely
I
national
did.
park.
I did one of those things where I like bought a square foot of the forest in Scotland,
Oh,
so that
really?
so that I'm technically a lord or
Oh,
something.
wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm like, because I guess if you own land in Scotland, there's like some old law. I don't
Yes.
know, some like medieval thing that I saw, and I got a framed picture that where it has my name, like Lord, like Lord Joseph Glazer or something like that. It's more of
I
a
could just see
joke.
you go to Scotland and being all snooty
Yeah.
and
Oh
hiding,
no,
like
I'm gonna be
it's like, excuse me,
super. When someone's like, "Hey, sir," I'll be like, "Excuse me?
Huh.
Did you call me
It's
sir,
yeah.
peasant?
I'm afraid
That's
to break
Lord to you."
it to you, old man, but it's
Yeah.
technically one of those things which isn't actually true. You've been sold down the
Oh, I've
river
been
on that one.
sold.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the guy
Okay.
it's it technically it sounds right, but here's the thing,
Okay.
it's mostly marketing. So
No, of course.
in
No, of course.
Scottish law, yeah,
100%.
owning
Yeah.
land
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
not make you a lord in the legal or noble
Okay.
sense. So titles like lord, lady, baron, and duke, and so on. They
Damn
are
it.
you
I've been
have to be
had.
they're inherited peerages or granted by the queen. You cannot buy your way into
There we go. Look
aristocracy.
at you getting all British now,
Yeah.
using the word peerage. I love it. Like your voice like went up an octave
Oh
in
yeah.
Brit there.
Wonderful.
It's
Yeah.
inherited
Yeah, you
peerage.
cannot
Yeah.
buy your way into the aristocracy with a novelty land deed, Joseph.
It doesn't work that way. I know.
Yeah, what you've
Damn it.
got is
I'm
what
just
you've
part of the merchant class.
indeed, yeah, you're a serf,
Yeah.
mate.
Just lowly merchant.
Yeah, mate, you're not even bloody. Yeah, well, indeed. But honestly, that's it. You're doing frightfully well. But that's about as far as it goes. Let's not get carried away.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let's not get carried away and act
yeah.
like I have a crest or something.
No,
Yeah.
no. So what you bought there is a souvenir plot, is what they call it.
That's exactly. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I definitely bought a souvenir there.
yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you'll get a certificate that says you're a laird, which is Scots word for a landowner, but it's not a legal title.
Oh, that's what it. Okay,
Yeah,
okay. So
yeah.
that's the technicality.
Yeah,
Okay, I
you won't
see.
get a seat in the House of Lords. You won't get a tartan wrap
Okay.
Bentley and valet called Angus.
Yeah, I don't get all that. Okay, I don't
Yeah,
get all that.
no, and
Damn it. All right.
you won't even be officially recognised on the Scottish Land Registry as owning that land either, because
Oh wow.
because it's too small to
God, I've
register.
really been had. I want my fucking $15 back.
Right.
All right. Yeah, I want.
It's like one of these things where you buy a fucking star and it gets named after you in the
Yeah.
NGC.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
like, oh
Yeah. Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
All the stars on Hollywood Boulevard are actually bought.
100% purchase. Yeah.
Nobody's
Yeah.
ever just given those. Those
Yeah.
are
No.
all
oh, for
bought and
sure.
paid
Yeah.
for, and they're all like
100%.
lobbied. Not one of those is like you wonder like why this super famous person doesn't have a star. It's because
Yeah.
that person didn't
Because
buy one
they didn't
for
like
them.
go get the permit and all that.
Yeah, it's not always the person themselves that do it, but yeah, all
Right.
of those
Right.
things are paid for, and that's income for the
For the
city.
city. Yeah.
Like
Okay.
huge income out of setting those
Gentlemen,
stars up.
gentlemen,
Yeah,
we've
we
got
need to
to
we've got to
wrap
wrap it
up.
up. We've got to wrap it up. I was going to
Yes.
say just before we do, I just want to tell you one fun fact about London. So you think of London as just one place, but actually, what you're talking about is Greater London, right? It's sprawling Greater London.
Hmm.
Your red
Right.
buses, your West End, whatever else,
Like
right?
I was talking about Enfield.
Indeed,
That's part
part
of
of
London.
Greater London,
Yes.
right? That's
Hmm.
Greater
That's
London.
like where I live, it's the greater LA area.
Okay.
That's why
Los
I just say
Angeles
LA.
County
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
boroughs, and
Sure.
Yeah.
But within that, there's this weird little area called the City of London.
Yes,
It
I'm
is
aware.
right, and it's a totally
Yes.
separate legal entity. It's
Yes.
1 square mile, which is why it's called the square mile.
Yep.
And it's where all of our skyscrapers and financial centers are,
hmm
right? It's
Right.
actually
where
got
everybody thinks of London when
yes,
they think of London, they think of that city.
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got its own mayor, the Lord Mayor of London.
The
Uh,
Lord Mayor.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's there's even a thing where every year they bloody Lord Mayor
God damn
parades
it.
through the city in a
I
gold
need to
coach
figure
pulled
out.
by horses.
God, yeah, I really want to be called Lord Joseph. Like, I want to have one of the guys in those like old uniforms holding that pole thing, like open the carriage door for me. I
Mm.
need to work this out before I die. Like, I'm gonna need to make up
I think
some.
we can figure that out.
I'm gonna have to
Again, everything is
falsify my birth.
everything's purchasable.
Yeah, well,
Just
we
put it
need to
that
get
way.
making some money so I can buy my way into
There
the,
it is. There
the
it is.
House of Windsor,
Well, Lord Sugar
the
managed
Saxe
it.
Gothberg
Yeah,
family.
Lord Sugar managed it, right? I mean, Alan Sugar was just a businessman, and then he ended up being made as Sir Alan Sugar, and now
Ah,
he's yeah. So he was, and when you're a Sir, you become Sir Al. So he became Sir Alan. So you become Sir
mm,
your first name. So you become Sir Joe. But then
Sir
now he's a
Joe,
Lord. He's now Lord Sugar, not Lord Alan. He's Lord
Lord
Sugar.
Sugar.
Yeah. So there
Yeah,
we go. He is actually Lord Sugar.
yes.
Yeah.
God,
What
we
would you
need
do if you went by your last name? Like,
Lord
would I be Lord
Glazer.
Lord
Dunk?
Glazer.
Would I be Lord Dunk? Or
Yeah, like, Lord
Indeed. But this
Dunk.
is some rare
I love
shit.
it.
Like you have to be invited by the crown. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, that was it. I just had to
Yeah.
throw that out there. So yeah, let's wrap this shit up. Absolutely. We've got plenty more shows to come.
Yeah.
We'll be back
Well,
tomorrow,
and
so we can carry on.
we have Yeti, I think, has a question here, so I want to
Oh,
pull
wonderful.
Yeti up
Brilliant.
before we
We have some
close out.
audience participation. Yes, please.
Yes, we have audience
People
participation.
listen. Wow. It's not just
This is
us.
what I like. Mr. Yeti Coco, what is up? I'm from Coco County, by the way, Contra Costa County.
Wow.
That's what we would call it. We call it Coco County.
Wonderful.
What's up, Yeti? I don't think Yeti's with us, or he's speaking and doesn't realize that he's got his mute button on,
Maybe he was had his hand raised for a while and
and then didn't even
stepped away.
realize. Yeah, then he walked
Yeah, we
away.
brought him up, and now we're yelling at
Yeah, we're
him, and now
yelling
he
at him,
didn't know.
and he's sound asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a great way to end the show. I think it's an awesome way. We've
Hey,
put
but
somebody to
Yeti, if
sleep.
you hear us, come to our other space. There's a lot of it, or the next one of this.
That's right. Come to the next podcast, Yeti.
Yeah, what are we thinking?
Um,
Are we back tomorrow? What are we doing?
we'll
What's
be
our
right. We'll be right back here again tomorrow. So you can absolutely come on back. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. Ladies,
okay?
gentlemen, people who came in to listen to the live recording, thank you guys. And anyone who's listening on YouTube, thank you guys for the time. If you made it all the way through, you're a soldier. It's a long time. Way to go. Proud of you. And we'll be back again tomorrow, guys, and we'll do it all over again. And guys, we're gonna need to make sure we throw up our little PayPal tip jar next time so people can tip us, because that's how we do this, guys. Believe it or not, me, Dunk, and Owen have to eat. Um, it's one of those things. Or Dunk, you don't eat
Three
actually,
days. 3 days. That's all it takes.
but no, you don't eat though. I
Right,
don't
that's
think
a good
Dunk
point. No,
eats.
but
Yeah,
that's got Dunk's
yeah,
right. But yeah, but if we don't get enough tips to eat within 3 days, this will be fucking anarchy, as we've seen.
yeah. This will be a
Yeah.
full-on
9 minutes.
anarchy.
But then now everyone's just going to not give us. No one's going to bother. They're going to say this will be fine. Let's just see it
Yeah, they're
happen.
just gonna see what happens. So make
Be
sure
the
you
big
leave a
new
tip,
reality show.
guys. We don't want this to turn into anarchy. So please do that. Again, people will spend $20 to go to what Owen calls the cinema, what we call the theater. You'll
Right.
spend $20 on a ticket for some nonsense. Instead of doing that, come here, listen to us spew nonsense, and give us the $20.
Yes,
Makes a lot more
and
sense.
then we'll pool all the money together, and then we'll fly and we'll do this live in some sort of pub in England, and we'll have a right old laugh, and things really will
I
go messy.
really, I really can't wait. I can't wait for us to do some of our first field trips too. See, that's what you people in the audience don't realize, that we're cooking up some
Mm.
field
Oh
trips
yeah.
where you're going to be able to see us um, go have our conversations live. Owen will go to an English pub.
Yeah.
I will go somewhere, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Mm.
So that's on the menu too. So stand by for that,
All
guys.
right.
I mean, even thinking, we'll do something too where we try to get some audience members to come and hang out with us
That'd be great.
and just do a little live chat. So just
Yeah.
trying to get all that worked out also. So
And I'm wondering as well if
you
people ought
know,
to be able to ask people what they want us to talk about too, because it could be because there's so many
yeah,
things we want to talk about, and also the question then is also, do we have shows which we're planning content, or do we just
we're
riff
not.
it and
Yeah,
see what's what kind of thing,
yeah,
or
there was
long.
zero plan. Yeah,
Yeah,
zero
at the
plan,
moment
guys.
there's nothing. Yeah, but we also
Yeah,
know that there's a million things that we will talk about and are likely to talk about. And I wonder
yeah,
if it is going to be good because you see like other wonderful podcasts, and they'll talk about on this episode we're going to be talking about this and this and this, and it might give people something more to specifically tune
exactly.
into
And
and
we'll have
so
some
on. So
guests coming in too.
yeah,
We'll have some guests and all
absolutely,
that stuff. So
absolutely. But yeah,
So yeah, if Frost, if you have something you want us to talk about, shoot us a
mm,
DM. Crowned, Buggy, Brianna, Bearded. You guys have anything you want us to talk about?
yeah.
Let
Mm.
us know. We'd be happy to do it.
But either way.
Worst thing is we'll say no. That's
Indeed,
the
yeah.
worst.
Well,
So
and in the meantime, we're just
yeah,
meandering, and we'll see what goes. Because as you say, this is early doors, and we're just here 90% for our own entertainment. And if we're
yeah,
entertaining each
right.
other and it does something for
And
other
it's a
people, then
win.
that's a win, isn't it? Really, yeah. So
Yeah.
we're just going to
But
keep
I'm
keep
hoping you
doing
guys are
this.
getting something out of this. I
Yeah.
hope you're getting,
Mm.
at the very least, entertained.
Hmm.
The very least, maybe you learn something. Maybe we
Mm.
make you laugh. Maybe we make you
Mm.
cry. Maybe we make you do all those
Mhm.
things. So,
Indeed, indeed.
anyway, come back for more tomorrow.
Cool.
Thank you guys for spending all this time with
Yes,
us.
thank you so much,
I love you
everybody.
all. You
Yeah,
guys are the best.
yeah. It's up,
Owen, sir,
sir.
have a good night, my friend.
Thank
Dunk,
you.
Have a good
It's
night.
7
Good
o'clock
day.
now.
Good day, everyone. Day, night, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys, what are you
This
on
is
now?
what
Wherever you
You're
are
happens
in the
when you
world.
talk to people all around the world.
Dude, it's 11, coming up on 11 a.m. Yeah, so you've got your Saturdays ahead of you. I've now got
I
a
know.
couple of hours left of my
Mhm.
Saturday.
I'm about to have my 11s.
Oh,
Your
wonderful.
elevensies,
My
your
11s.
elevensies.
Do you know,
11s.
guess I
Yes.
had 2 cups of tea during this. I quietly went
I
over and
love
boiled the
it.
kettle twice and had 2 cups of tea quietly doing this.
I
So
I had no clue. I had no
And we were
clue.
just drinking our Long Island iced tea.
there we are.
Still counts as tea. It has the word tea in it.
Wonderful,
That
wonderful.
counts. That counts.
Well,
Mhm.
that's so good. Thank you, guys. Honestly, it's been such a pleasure and such a privilege to get to do this with you both. And I hope that
It really is.
people, we along with everybody else and all of our listeners, hopefully this is a journey for everybody. And as long as it's serving some purpose, as you say, even if it's just to give us something to fucking do. I look forward to what happens and where we go. So yeah, splendid. Always a pleasure.
That's
And
right.
let's rock and roll, as they say.
All right, brother. Until tomorrow.
Until
I will
tomorrow.
see you.
Fantastic. Take care, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.